descent. 185. Okay, 75 feet. Guys looking good.
Stand
down
by
a
for
half.
60. Roger.
6 forward.
60 seconds.
60 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward.
Using a lot of RCS.
No problem. Roger. 40 feet down 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow.
Stand by for 30.
4 forward, drifting to the right a little.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Forward, just. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent.
Shut
Post
down.
control, both auto, descent engine command override off.
We're there.
Engine arm off. 413 is in.
We've had shutdown.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Absent RCS.
Hey, everybody, Roger. Okay, fellas, steady now. Stay with it. Keep your eye on it.
The Eagle has landed.
Don't relax yet.
Tranquility, we copy
Looks
you on
beautiful.
the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Okay, keep your eye on it.
Everything is steady. Steady as a rock.
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute. After I'm on, take care of the descent. I'll get this bus repaired.
Okay, our flight controller is about 45 seconds to T1, stay no stay.
Flight, that
Go, guidance.
14 plus 2 looks
He's
beautiful.
getting ready to bend. Keep your eye on it.
Very smooth touchdown.
Okay, keep the chatter.
Eggs is good, Bob. It didn't drop the platform.
Roger.
All those are on, Platty.
Roger.
Things looks okay.
Made a proper
Okay, T1, stay no stay. Retro. Stay. Vital. Stay. Guidance. Stay. Control. Stay. Telcom. Stay. NC. Stay. Ecom. Stay. Surgeon. Stay. Capcom, we're stay for T1.
Oxidizer. Venting oxidizer.
Roger.
Roger, Eagle, and you are stay for T1.
Margin's looking good. We're coming up on a nominal here.
Okay, all flight controllers, go for landing. Retro. Go. Vital. Go. Guidance. Go. Control.
And
Go. Telcom.
go.
GNC. Go. Ecom.
Copy.
Roger.
Go.
Capcom, we're go for landing.
Eagle, Houston, you're a go for landing, over.
Back in 9 minutes. Margin is about 4.5.
Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. Copy. Alarm. Alarm. 1201. 1201. Roger, 1201 alarm.
TCP, you just lost there, Bill.
Roger, I just see that.
Go.
Same type. We're go. T1D. Flight set on right.
Just leave it alone. It's
2,000
okay.
feet. Into the ag, 47 degrees. Roger. 47 degrees.
How's our margin looking, Bob? It looks okay. We've got 4.5.
Good.
Roger.
Eagle looking great. You go. Altitude update next. Looks good.
Roger.
Roger, 1202. We copy it.
How you doing,
35
Control?
degrees.
We look good here, fine. Roger, how about you, Telcom? Go. Guidance, you happy? Go. Vital.
Go. 700 feet, 21 down. 33 degrees. 100 feet down at 19.
10 minutes.
We just passed low gate.
540
For mission
feet
risk
down at
purposes.
30. Down at 15.
We're in attitude hold.
Attitude hold. Okay, at hold.
I think we better be quiet. 400 feet down at 9.
Okay, the only call-outs from now on will be fuel.
10 and 50 feet down at 4.
P66.
6.5 down. They're pegged on horizontal velocity. 300 feet down, 3.5. 47 forward. Hold up. On 1.5 down. 70. Got the shadow out there. 50 down at 2.5. 19 forward.
11 minutes.
Roger.
Tips RCS go.
Roger, have your call-out shortly.
3.5 down.
We're getting a difference.
20 feet.
Standing by for low level.
13 forward. 11 forward, coming down nicely. 200 feet. 4.5 down. 5.5 60 feet, 6.5 down, 5.5 down. 9 forward.
Low level.
Low level. Low level.
Good. Turn 20 feet. 100 feet, 3.5 down, 9 forward. 5%. 185. Okay, 75 feet. Guys looking good.
Stand
down
out
a
to
half.
60. Roger.
6 forward.
60
60.
seconds.
60 seconds.
60 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward.
Using a lot of RCS.
Good.
No problem. Roger.
40 feet down 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow.
Stand by for 30.
4 forward, drift into the right a little.
30 seconds.
30. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Forward, drift. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ATA at a descent.
Shut
Post
down.
control, both auto, descent engine command override off.
We're there.
Engine arm off. 413 is in.
We've had shutdown.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Absent RCS.
Okay, everybody.
Steady.
Roger. Okay, fellas, steady now. Stay with it. Keep your eye on it.
The Eagle has landed.
Don't relax yet.
Tranquility, we copy
Looks
you on
beautiful.
the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Okay, keep your eye on it.
Everything is steady. Steady as a rock.
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute. After I'm on, take care of the descent. I'll get the stuff prepared.
Okay, our flight controller is about 45 seconds to T1, stay no stay.
Flight.
Go, guidance.
14 plus 2 looks
He's
beautiful.
getting ready to bend. Keep your eye on it.
Very smooth touchdown.
Okay, keep the chatter.
Eggs is good, Bob. It didn't drop the platform.
Roger.
How was one, buddy?
Roger.
Things looks okay.
Made a proper
Okay, T1, stay no stay. Retro. Stay. Vital. Stay. Guidance. Stay. Control. Stay. Telcom. Stay. NC. Stay. Ecom. Stay. Surgeon. Stay. Capcom, we're stay for
We are
T1.
venting oxidizer. Repeat, venting oxidizer.
Roger.
Roger, Eagle, and you are stay for T1.
Roger.
Margins looking good. We're coming up on a nominal here.
Okay, all flight controllers, gonna go for landing. Retro. Go. Vital. Go. Guidance. Go. Control.
And
Go.
go.
Telcom.
Go.
GNC. Go. Ecom.
Copy.
Roger.
Go.
Capcom, we're go for landing.
Eagle, Houston, you're a go for landing, over.
Back in 9 minutes. Margin
Roger.
is about 4.5.
Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet.
Copy.
Alarm. Alarm. 1201. 1201.
Roger, 1201.
You just lost there, Bill.
Roger, I just see that.
Go.
Same type. We're go.
T1D.
Flight settle right
Just
on.
leave it alone. It's
2,000
okay.
feet. Into the ag, 47 degrees. Roger. 47 degrees.
How's our margin looking, Bob? It looks okay with that 4.5.
Good.
Roger.
Eagle looking great. You go.
Altitude update next. Looks good. Roger.
Roger, 1202. We copy it.
How you doing,
35
Control?
degrees.
We look good here. Fine. All right, how about you, Telcom? Go. Guidance, you happy? Go. Vital.
Go. 700 feet, 21 down. 33 degrees. 100 feet down at 19.
10 minutes.
We just passed low gate.
540
For mission
feet down
risk
at
purposes.
30 and at 15.
We're in attitude hold.
Attitude hold. Okay, at hold.
I think we better be quiet. 400
Roger.
feet down at 9.
Okay, the only call-outs from now on will be fuel.
10 and 50 feet down at 4.
P66.
6.5 down. They're baked on horizontal velocity. 300 feet down, 3.5. 47 forward. Put up. On 1.5 down. 70. Got the shadow out there. 50 down at 2.5. 19 forward.
11 minutes.
Roger.
Skips RCS, go.
Roger, your call out shortly.
3.5 down.
Difference.
20 feet.
Standing by for low level.
13 forward. 11 forward, coming down nicely, 200 feet. 4.5 down. 5.5 down. 160 feet, 6.5 down. 5.5 down. 9 forward.
Low level.
Low level. Low level.
Good. 20 feet. 100 feet, 3.5 down. 9 forward. 5%. 185. Okay, 75 feet. Guys looking good.
Stand
Down
by
a
for
half.
60. Roger.
6 forward.
60
60
seconds.
seconds. 60 seconds.
Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward.
Using a lot of RCS.
That's
No problem. Roger.
40 feet down 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow.
Stand by for 30.
4 forward, drift into the right a little.
30 seconds.
30. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Forward, drift. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent.
Shut
Host
down.
control both auto, descent engine command override off.
We're there.
Engine arm off. 413 is in.
We've had shutdown. We copy you down, Eagle.
Absent RCS.
Okay, everybody. Roger. Okay, fellas, steady now. Stay with it. Keep your eye on it.
The Eagle has landed.
Don't relax yet.
Tranquility, we copy
Looks
you on
beautiful.
the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, keep your eye on it.
Everything is steady. Steady as a rock.
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute. I can have to on. Take care of the descent. I'll get the bus repaired.
Okay, our flight controller is about 45 seconds to T1, stay no stay.
Flight. That
Go, guidance.
14 plus 2 looks
He's
beautiful.
getting ready to bend. Keep your eye on it.
Very smooth touchdown.
Okay, keep the chatter.
Eggs is good, Bob. It didn't drop the platform.
Roger.
Power's on, buddy.
Roger.
Things looks okay.
Made a proper
Okay, T1, stay no stay. Retro. Stay. Vital. Stay. Guidance. Stay. Control. Stay. Telcom. Stay. NC. Stay. Ecom. Stay. Surgeon. Stay. Capcom, we're stay for
We are
T1.
oxidizer. Bending oxidizer.
Roger.
Roger, Eagle, and you are stay for T1.
Margins looking good. We're coming up on a nominal here.
Okay, all flight controllers gonna go for landing. Retro. Go. Vital. Go. Guidance. Go. Control.
And
Go. Telcom.
go.
GNC. Go. Ecom.
Copy.
Roger.
Go.
Capcom, we're go for landing.
Eagle, Houston, you're a go for landing, over.
Back in 10 minutes. Margin is about 4.5.
Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet.
Copy.
Alarm.
Another alarm.
1201. 1201.
Roger, 1201 alarm.
you did your lost there, Bill.
Roger, I just see that.
Go, same type, we're go.
T1D. Flight set
Hey,
right
you
on.
just leave it alone. It's
2,000
okay.
feet. Into the ag, 47 degrees.
Roger.
47 degrees.
How's our margin looking, Bob? He looks okay without
Okay,
one to hide.
good.
Roger.
Eagle looking great, you go.
Altitude update next. Looks good. Roger.
Roger, 1202, we copy it.
How you doing,
35
Control?
degrees.
We look good here, fine. Roger, how about you, Telcom? Go. Guidance, you happy? Go. Vital.
Go. 700 feet, 21 down. 33 degrees. 100 feet down at 19.
10 minutes.
We just passed low gate.
540
For mission
feet
risk
down at
purposes.
30 and at 15.
We're in attitude hold.
Attitude hold. Okay, at hold.
I think we better be quiet.
There's 400
Roger.
feet down at 9.
Okay, the only call-outs from now on will be fuel.
10 and 50 feet down at 4.
P66.
and a half down. They're pegged on horizontal velocity. 300 feet down, 3.5. 19 forward.
11 minutes.
Roger.
Tips RCS go.
Roger. Good call out shortly.
3.5
We're getting
down.
a bit difference.
20 feet.
Standing by for low level.
13 forward. 11 forward, coming down nicely. 200 feet. 4.5 down. 5.5 down. 160 feet. 6.5 down. 5.5 down. 9 forward.
Low level.
Low level. Low level.
Good. 20 feet. 100 feet. 3.5 down. 9 forward. 5%. 185. Okay, 75 feet. Guys looking good.
Stand
Down
by for
a half.
60. Roger.
6 forward.
60
60.
seconds.
60 seconds.
60 seconds.
Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward.
Using a lot of RCS.
Good.
No pump.
Roger.
40 feet down 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow.
Stand by
4
for 30.
forward. 4 forward. Drifting to the right a little.
30 seconds.
30. 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Forward. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent.
Shut
Post
down.
control both auto descent engine command override off.
We're there.
Engine arm off. 413 is in.
We've had shutdown.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Absent RCS.
Hey, everybody.
Steady.
Roger. Okay, fellas, steady now. Stay with it. Keep your eye on it.
The Eagle has landed.
Don't relax yet.
Tranquility. We copy
Looks
you on
beautiful.
the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, keep your eye on it.
Everything is steady. Steady as a rock.
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute. After I'm on, take care of the descent. I'll get the structure back.
Okay, our flight controller is about 45 seconds to T1, stay no stay.
Flight, that
Go, guidance.
14 plus 2 looks
He's
beautiful.
getting ready to bend. Keep your eye on it.
Very smooth touchdown.
Okay, keep the chatter.
Eggs is good, Bob. It didn't drop the platform.
Roger.
Those are on, buddy.
Roger.
Things looks okay.
Made a proper
Okay, T1, stay no stay. Retro. Stay. Vital. Stay. Guidance. Stay. Control. Stay. Telcom. Stay. NC. Stay. Ecom.
Stay.
Surgeon. Stay. Capcom or stay for
We are
T1.
bending oxidizer. Bending oxidizer.
Roger.
Roger, Eagle, and you are safe for T1.
Margin's looking good. We're coming up on a nominal here.
Okay, all flight controllers gonna go for landing. Retro. Go. Vital. Go. Guidance. Go. Control.
And
Go.
go.
Telcom.
Go.
GNC. Go. Ecom.
Copy.
Roger. Go. Capcom or go for landing.
Eagle, Houston, you're a go for landing. Over.
Back in 9 minutes. Margin is about 4.5.
Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet.
Copy.
Alarm.
Another alarm.
1201. 1201.
Roger, 1201 alarm.
just your launch there, Bill.
Roger, I just see that.
We're go. Same type. We're go.
T1D. Flight side on right.
Just leave it alone. It's
2,000
okay.
feet. Into the ag. 47 degrees.
Roger.
47 degrees.
How's our margin looking, Bob? It looks okay without
Okay,
it. One high.
good.
Roger.
Eagle looking great. You're go.
Altitude update next. Looks good. Roger.
Roger, 1202. We copy it.
How you doing,
35
Control?
degrees.
We look good here. Fine. Roger. How about you, Telcom? Go. Guidance, you happy? Go. Vital.
Go. 700 feet, 21 down. 33 degrees. 100 feet down at 19.
10 minutes.
We just passed low gate.
540
For mission
feet
risk
down at
purposes.
30 and at 15.
We're in attitude.
And then I would have to go into that, trying to figure out what was going on.
Here we go. You got it.
All right. My computer freaked out a little bit. I think we're live. I think we're good. And we've got everybody here.
Speaking of old computers, Kennedy's.
It's rough. I'm just going to make sure, double check. Chat, can you hear us? Can everybody hear us okay on the chat? And as soon as I've got that, we're good to go.
I can certainly hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. I see my stream buffering a lot for some reason. That's great.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna close Chrome, and hopefully that'll stop eating up some resources, and then I'll just watch the chat from my phone. All right.
He hears both. There we go.
Okay.
They can hear us.
All right. So, welcome everyone. I do apologize for the long start. If there's any kind of connectivity issues here, should be sorted out momentarily. But today we have a debate on the Apollo moon landings, whether or not they were a hoax or whether or not they really happened. Just so everyone knows, my opinion of it is that Stanley Kubrick did direct the moon landings. He's just such a perfectionist that he insisted they be filmed on location. Arguing on behalf of the Apollo missions being a reality is Blue Earth Thing, and arguing on behalf of them being a hoax is Marcus Allen. And it's going to be a pretty open, free-form discussion, to my understanding, but we did want to do some quick intro stuff, so I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes. Does anybody have a preference as to who should go first?
I think you should go first.
Blue Earth Thing, you first?
All right, I can go first, yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Cool. I am Blue Earth Thing. I'm a friend of Kevin Kennedy's, so you've probably seen me before, but I'll go through with it. I've been on YouTube for about 1.5 years. If you'd like, you can refer to me either as Blue Earth Thing or Blue. That's shorter. I'm a student at UAB, University of Alabama at Birmingham. Sorry, Britain, but Birmingham, Alabama is the best Birmingham. And I am an editor. That is what I do. That's one of the current jobs I have. I'm a broadcasting student, but I've spent 2 years in engineering school, so I do know a little bit when it comes to engineering. I have had, and when I come at the whole moon landing thing, I come from it from a filmmaker's point of view. I have worked on sets, I have been on sets, and I have taken pretty high class classes on filmmaking and everything like that. So I think I know a thing or two when it comes to lighting. Speaking of lighting, I have worked at one of the largest lighting rental companies in my state. So I do know a thing or two about lights and cameras and stuff like that. And so I'm just trying to make sure that you realize, everybody, that I do kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to film and lighting. I have studied rocketry and space travel all my life. It's always been an interest of me. And real quick, I do want to thank Marcus for coming up and doing all this. It's been a fun chatting with him, and I'm really happy that he's been respectful and everything. And I do want to make sure, absolutely make sure, because this is a request from Marcus, this guy is 100% not a flat earther, okay? 100% not a flat earther. He's not one of those crazies. Marcus is, from what I could tell, is a really cool dude. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and I'll give all my rest of my time to Marcus.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your comment there. Just to say that you can tell that I'm a bit older than the others, a bit older than Kevin, a bit older than Blue. I was born during World War II. I go back that far, and I was in London at the time of the Apollo landings, and I watched them on my little black and white television. We didn't have color television back then. And I thought, this is a fantastic achievement. Wow. I even got up and waved out the window on that Sunday was it a Sunday when they actually landed? July the 20th? Or whatever day it was, I was watching it. 3:30 in the morning in London. And got up, waved out the window. Nobody waved back, so it's a long way away. Anyway, at the time I was at photographic college. I was studying to be a photographer. I'd already driven to India in a Land Rover, and I'd taken a lot of photographs. I knew what photographs I wanted to take, but what I wanted to learn about was the technical side of photography. What cameras could do, what cameras couldn't do, what film could record, what film couldn't record. The sort of technical aspects of it. And this is back in the days of black and white film. Now, some of your audience may even be familiar with this stuff. Photographic film. That's what I was using. So when somebody mentioned, this is about 1990, somebody mentioned during a talk I attended down in Glastonbury, not for the music festival, but for the other things that go on in Glastonbury, and they happened to mention almost in passing, well, of course, those moon photographs, they weren't taken on the moon. I thought, what is he on about? I saw them land. I've seen the photographs. Well, I've seen a few of them, because don't forget, 1990, it's before the days of the internet. I had to go out and buy a set of photographs. I found a few in books, and I got a set of postcards. I've still got them. These are the sort of basic photographs you'd expect to see. This happens to be one of them. The famous man on the moon photograph, Buzz Aldrin, taken by Neil Armstrong, we're told. So I was looking at these photographs and some of the other ones, and one of the other ones was this one, which was Buzz Aldrin coming down the ladder from the Eagle, and I started looking at them, and now knowing a little bit about photography and knowing what light can and cannot do, what film can and cannot record, because bear in mind, and this is something very important to realize, that when we're discussing photographs, we're discussing film images. We're not discussing digital images. Though the photographs that you'll see on the internet have been digitized, the original photograph was a film image or a reversal image, transparency. Those are two very different mediums for recording images. Anyway, the more I looked at these photographs, the more I became aware that there were problems. I could see there were problems. So I started looking into it. I met up with some other people who were doing similar research, who were looking into this area as well. We started comparing notes, and we started looking into other areas. At that time, I didn't know a great deal about the conditions on the moon and how to get to the moon and all that Apollo involved. I've subsequently discovered that. This is over 25 years ago. In the last 25 years, I've become aware of exactly what was going on in Apollo and the conditions on the moon and the conditions under which these photographs were taken. And the more I looked at them, the more I became dubious, to say the least, that what we were looking at was what it claimed to be, i.e. photographs taken on the lunar surface. And you start getting into the radiation issues, and you start getting into the vacuum issues, and you start getting into all the other problems that occur in space that don't occur on Earth. Because there's radiation on Earth, which is why photographic film always had an expiry date on it, because if you let it out for long enough, it would absorb enough background radiation to damage the film, and Kodak wouldn't be best pleased. So they always said it an expiry date. If you used it after the date, they said, oh, not our fault, you left it out too long. So that was my first indication that possibly radiation, natural background radiation, could have an effect on photographic film. And the more I started looking into it, the more I've become aware that there were major problems, or there were questions that were quite legitimate to ask, which were not being asked, not being answered, specifically by NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or as the New York Times dubbed them way back, never a straight answer, because they were not getting answers to legitimate questions, and nor was I, and nor a lot of other people. And a friend of mine did a film about 20 years ago, and he interviewed the PR chap at NASA. At that time it was Brown Welch, who subsequently died. This is back in the late 90s. And he was asked various questions on camera. And his answer was, we don't have enough time for this nitpicky claptrap, which seems a very unprofessional type of answer. He wasn't even prepared to address it, even to the point of denying anything that was being suggested. Anyway, the more I went on, the more I discovered that there were a lot of other people interested in finding the answers to this. Did it happen the way we've been shown, or was there another story? And the more I've gone on, the more I've discovered that there appears to be another story. And the story is that, right, you have to go back to the time that this was occurring. This is the late 1960s, early 1970s. Apollo was, its major expenditure was in the mid-1960s, when it apparently devoured 4% of American budget. There was a huge amount of money back there, quite a large amount of money back there right now. So what you've got is a huge number of people involved in an extraordinarily complex operation. So if there was if there were any misgivings going on, surely these people would have known about it. That's a very logical thing to think, until you start looking into the whole aspect of what was actually going on. Bear in mind, this is the height of the Cold War between Russia, or as it was then, the Soviet Union, and the United States. This was also the height of the Vietnam War, which was turning very unpleasant. And that was appearing on television screens in most homes, and people were getting very upset about it. It was also the height of the space race. Who could get to the moon first? Because Russia had done a great deal of activity prior to Apollo. They were the first to reach the moon in 1959, unmanned craft. They photographed the back of it, and it was considered to be quite an achievement. Then they had the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, April 1961. When all this was going on, of course, there was a new president in America, John Kennedy. He'd only been in office about 4 months at the time of Yuri Gagarin's flight. He had to be seen to be doing something. He'd already had to endure the Bay of Pigs fiasco. So here he was, 4 months later, new president. Right, we're going to land a man on the moon before the decade is out and return him safely to the Earth. It was so well known, it was such a dramatic announcement that we can still quote it almost verbatim today. But he had to be seen to be doing something. But the only experience that Americans had in space, putting humans into space at that time, was Alan Shepard, who'd gone up on Freedom 7, one of the Mercury craft. He'd gone up about 100 miles and come straight back down again, about 15 minutes in space. And now we're going to land on the moon. Right, it was still 9 years in the future. But 9 years isn't a long time in space exploration. There's a lot of things to overcome. So from a standing start, America land on the moon, July 1969. So what we've got here is a fairly extraordinary technical achievement. But was it that extraordinary, or was it something that we maybe can ask questions about? Maybe that's what we'll do now.
Okay.
All right.
Absolutely. I think that's the best thing to do here. Marcus has questions. Blue, you may have answers. Let's see. Open discussion. Go ahead, guys.
I want to rocket to the moon within 9 years. In fact, we have been experimenting with rocketry ever since Operation Paperclip, when we got all the rocket scientists from Germany. And all the way back to like the 1950s, I have a video myself of us sending rockets up into space and taking pictures of Earth dating back to 1955. And to say that we had a standing start within 9 years made it up kind of ignores all the missions that it took to get to Apollo, including Mercury and Gemini. So what do you think about Mercury and Gemini? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, absolutely. The way we were told it happened.
Okay.
Just one point on those rockets. Mercury, Gemini, were only going into Earth orbit, about 200 miles up. Nobody had actually left Earth orbit. Nobody had achieved escape velocity.
Okay, so I'm curious. I'm curious as to. Sorry for interrupting you there. Sorry about that. If you have anything else.
No, go on.
All right. I'm curious as to what you think. What's preventing humans from making it to the moon if they made it to low Earth orbit? What is it that prevented us from making it to the moon?
Okay, getting into low Earth orbit is relatively easy. I say relatively. It's not that simple. It requires a great deal of technical ability to even get into Earth orbit, and that's only 200 miles up. That's the distance between New York and Washington. We're not talking a great deal of distance. Getting to the moon, though you can see it, it's, let's say in round numbers, 250,000 miles away. I said many thousands of times further away. There are a great many obstacles to overcome, not least of which is escape velocity. Going into Earth orbit, you achieve 17,500 miles an hour, and you go into orbit around the Earth. It takes an hour and a half to go round, and you can do that for as long as you like. It's not difficult. Getting to the moon, you've got to accelerate from Earth orbit speed at 25,000 miles an hour. Now, the inverse square law comes in at this point. It's not just a matter of increasing your speed by 50%. You've got to double the energy required to do it. So you've got to carry a lot more fuel. Therefore, you've got to have a bigger rocket. No, sure, the Operation Paperclip scientists, Werner von Braun being one of them, had developed rockets in the early 1940s. I know because he fired 2,500 of them at London with a ton of explosive on the top. They were extremely unpleasant things. I wasn't old enough to experience them exploding because I was evacuated out of London. But these were known about. And Werner von Braun could build these things, but they didn't go any higher than Earth orbit, maybe 200 miles up. Getting to the moon is a completely different story. It requires a great deal more energy in the rocket, which means a great deal larger rocket, hence the Saturn V.
Yeah.
So, because it had the 5 F1 engines. That was only the first part. When that thing launched, and it did launch, I'm not disputing the launch of the Saturn V, any of the Saturn Vs, they all launched. We saw them launch. 1 million people watched Apollo 11. 2 minutes after it launched, or maybe a wee bit longer, but about 2 minutes after it launched, the rocket disappears from view. How do we know what happened next? We have to rely on the word of NASA to tell us what happened next. They're the only people who had the ability to tell us. There were no independently verifiable witnesses. There are people who will claim that ham radio operators listened in. There will be people who claim that they have photographs showing the rockets leaving Earth orbit. It's a bit of a strange thing to be able to claim because the rockets are a long way away. All right, maybe.
Well, I would dispute that real quick. The being able to see the rockets. It's been found. You know, recently the SpaceX, the car that got launched into space by SpaceX and Elon Musk. Well, that was found by amateur astronomers observing it on its way out of escape velocity out of Earth's orbit. Sure. So it is possible with math. You can find it.
Elon Musk was particularly keen that people did that, so he told everybody exactly the trajectory on which the rocket was going.
Well, yeah, because it's such a cool thing to do.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do. You know, well, it's one way to find a car. So it'll get to Mars eventually, I'm told, and they'll probably find it there. Hopefully, it'll land in one piece. And at some point in the future, archaeologists will come on and say, "What is this strange things with four circular objects at the corner? How did that get to Mars?"
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Sorry.
There was a couple things in there that I wanted to address, and what you were talking about, escape velocity. So you don't actually have to reach, as far as I know, escape velocity of the Earth in order to make it to the moon. You only have to reach enough speed in order to get within the moon's orbit. This is something that actually I'll show real quick for Kevin Kennedy's channel, Dead Kennedy Space's channel. He himself had a video addressing this. There's a very informative simulation software out there called Kerbal Space Program, in which you can actually test this theory yourself, and you can send a rocket up, and you don't have to reach escape velocity. You can use the Earth's gravitational field as a slingshot to send you up into the moon, and it takes drastically less energy into it to do so. In fact, we know how fast that the orbiter, or we know how fast the CSM went, which was 11.08 kilometers per second, or for us Americans, 24,791 miles per hour. And when you do calculate the math, and when you do it, that is enough in order to get there. And again, when you do the math, the Saturn V could accomplish that speed.
Oh yeah, of course it could. Of course it could. That's what we watched, and that's what we're told happened. But as I say, there are no independently verifiable witnesses. Well, there wouldn't be any witnesses. There's no independently verifiable evidence. But let's leave that, because we'll come back to that.
Okay. We'll come back to that.
There are other things. But okay, when the Saturn V rockets left Earth orbit, or left Earth, what speed is it doing when it reaches the moon?
So that's the thing. When it's in the traveling from Earth to the moon, and of course when you calculate speed, it's all relative. So between the Earth and the Moon, it is traveling at 24,791 miles per hour, or 11.08 kilometers per second, which is blistering fast. But once it reaches the Moon, it will come around. It's not going straight towards it. It's obviously going slightly to the side in order to catch its orbit, catch inside of its orbit, and then it will slow down. They did a burn once they got into the Moon's gravitational field to slow itself down, and then just orbit the Moon like that. So that's what it tried to do. It didn't just try to crash into it.
If that's the case, and it left Earth at 25,000 miles an hour, and the Moon is 250,000 miles away, why didn't it take 10 hours to get there? It took 3 days, 72 hours. The point is that it was slowing down all the way to the Moon because it was being dragged back by the Earth's gravity. The rocket
yeah, that is true, yeah. Sorry, I did misspeak. You're right. That is true. It was being dragged back. But they don't have to burn their engines the entire time going there.
No, they don't. In fact, they did, because the speed they were leaving Earth at is the speed that they would be required to reach the gravitational neutral point between Earth and the Moon. It's about 20,000 miles off the Moon's surface.
They're running on minimums, yeah.
Yeah, it starts to be accelerated by the gravity of the Moon. So it goes into orbit around the Moon doing about 6,000 miles an hour. Yeah. Again, it takes about an hour and a half to orbit the Moon.
But because they're all running on minimums, they're trying to get the minimum speed to make it to the Moon, and the minimum, everything is minimum to save as much energy as possible. And it seems like you accept all that. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's basic physics.
My question would be, if we have the rocket to get us there, and we have the math to get us there, why didn't we go there?
Okay. How do we know we did go there?
So this is where I'm going to state that I don't have the burden of proof.
Okay. Let's just take it to the next step. So they land on the Moon. Let's talk about Apollo 11 because that's what most people are familiar with.
That's fine with me.
Armstrong. Just one little aside. Where is Armstrong buried? He died in 2012.
I actually do not know.
You would think it would be Arlington National Cemetery, wouldn't you?
No. As far as I could tell, he was not military.
He was naval.
Was he? I thought he was not military.
He was a naval pilot.
Okay. I knew he was a test pilot. I didn't know if he was military or not. Yeah.
He flew in Korea. He had 55 kills to his name. He was a naval pilot. He subsequently then joined.
That's ace.
He was very good.
Yeah, that's actual defined as ace now. So I think it's 5 makes you an ace.
Oh, good for him. He was doing his job very well. But he was one of the most, if not the most famous American for many years.
Yes.
American presidents, American heroes. Charles Lindbergh is one, and he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Gus Grissom is. You expect he'd be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. No, he's not. He was buried at sea off the coast of Florida, which I think it was to ensure that his final resting place was not vandalized. Or anyway, it just seems a strange thing to do. A strange thing to me. Anyway, let's assume that it all happened as we've been told.
Okay.
And they land on the Moon. Now, most of the information that people will be familiar with are from the photographs that were taken on the lunar surface.
Okay.
In total, in Apollo 11, there were 121 photographs taken on the lunar surface. For all the 6 missions that landed, and there were 6 that landed, there were another 3 that didn't land, that orbited the Moon, there were 5,171. So there's quite a lot of photographs. So let's have a look at the camera that took these photographs. So if you go to, on my sheet of images, number 17, the last one.
Okay. Kennedy, can we get that up?
If you got that one, number 17. Hasselblad 500EL.
All right, so number 17. When I download,
got it up.
all right, cool, because I have to see it on the screen because my computer, for some reason, did not download 3 of your images that you sent to us. So
I got them all, so they'll all be on stream.
All right, good.
Okay. What we got here are 4 photographs. They are showing the Hasselblad lunar camera that took these photographs. that we're all familiar with. And there are a few points to bear in mind about this camera. For a start, it has no viewfinder. The viewfinder on the Hasselblad is normally on top of the camera, so you look down into it. But if you're wearing a spacesuit and a helmet, you can't get your head down far enough to look into the viewfinder. So it took it away. So there's no mirror. So there's no sound. So how do you know if you've taken a photograph? Bottom right-hand image, there are 3 dials. The center dial is the film counter, which tells you how many photographs have been taken. Bottom left, the little black square on the front of the camera is the shutter. The shutter button on a Hasselblad is always on the front of the camera. Because they were going to be using armored gauntlets on their spacesuit, they had to have a big enough shutter button to be able to press it. But they couldn't see it from inside the spacesuit. Bit of a problem, that. They don't know if you've taken a photograph. You can't see the shutter to press it. The lens on the front of the camera is a manual lens. Now, this may all sound terribly 20th century and old-fashioned, but this was not a point-and-shoot camera. It was not an automatic camera. The only automatic function it had was to wind the film on. After you've taken an image, the film would automatically be moved forward. By the batteries on the top right, you'll see the batteries underneath the camera. They're standard, made by Varta in this case, D2 style batteries. On the lens, there are 3 dials which have to be adjusted for every photograph. The focus ring, the shutter speed ring, that's the f160th, f125th, f250th, or the aperture setting, that's the f5.6, f8, f11. Each of those has to be set. If you change your view, you have to focus it. It's a wide-angle lens, slight wide-angle lens, 60mm Biogon lens, but you still have to focus it. Now, the point is that if you can't see what you're photographing because you haven't got a viewfinder, you've got to point the camera in the general direction of what you want to photograph. How do you know you're not going to cut somebody's head off? Now, these are all highly trained astronauts, but they're not necessarily highly trained photographers. They know how to operate the camera because they've been using them for quite a long time when they were walking around photographing their family in a barbecue. But they had a lot of other things to do when they're on the moon. Not just take photographs. They had to collect rocks, they had to put the flag up, they had to talk to the president, they had to walk around, they had to make sure the video camera was set up properly, they had to make sure the film camera was working properly. So you've got all these restrictions on use, and in the 2 hours, 21 minutes that Armstrong was on the lunar surface, he took most of the photographs. And have you actually seen a photograph of Neil Armstrong on the lunar surface? There is supposedly one, but that's all. Most of the pictures show Buzz Aldrin. They did have 2 cameras, one for each astronaut, but they only used one, which seemed a bit peculiar. Now, there's another problem that arises here. We mentioned that these were taken with photographic film. They were not digital cameras. Photographic film cannot work in a vacuum. It's destroyed. It becomes too brittle. It outgasses. The emulsion on the film outgasses. The film itself becomes very, very brittle. Now, how do we know this? Right. About 18 months ago, I attended a talk in London given by the designer of the camera system for the Hexagon spy satellite. He's retired now, but he was very proud, and quite rightly so, of the equipment that he helped build and design for the Hexagon spy satellite. Excuse me, the Hexagon spy satellite was necessary following the shooting down of Gary Powers in May 1960, when he was flying over Russia, photographing all their missile sites and bomber squadrons. Got shot down, so President Eisenhower at the time said, right, no more overflights. So they had to get around to doing spy satellites, which fly too high. But satellites at that time were unmanned, so they had to have a camera that worked automatically. It was a film camera that was used in the Hexagon spy satellite. And almost in passing, the person giving the talk said, well, of course, we had to keep the film pressurized. I thought, what? Got to keep the film pressurized. Actually asked him to confirm it. He did. He said, yes, film has to be pressurized in a vacuum, otherwise it doesn't work. You then look at I then checked out the Hexagon spy satellite itself and found that there were the camera and the film. There was about 3 miles of film contained within the Hexagon, and it was all housed in a special pressurized environment. He actually pointed out the nitrogen gas bottle that provided the pressure.
All right.
And I thought, okay, you've got to pressurize it. Now, I also knew there was another satellite which used photographic film. That's the Lunar Orbiter. Not the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. We'll come to that later, possibly. The Lunar Orbiter, which photographed potential landing sites for the Apollo craft in 1966, 1967. That used photographic film.
All right.
Well, Marcus, I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off here. It's just we've brought up a lot of points here. Would you be okay if Blue Earth Thing responds to some of those?
Yeah, of course. Please do.
Okay.
All right. You know, look. If I'm wrong, I want to know about it.
Okay. So I just started making a little list of them. The first one, the no viewfinder thing, when it comes to whether or not they got everything in frame and were able to get everything in frame. I can tell you right now with the camera that I have, and I can just take it without a viewfinder and I can get most things in frame most of the time. And I would argue that these are the astronauts. They weren't highly trained geologists either. These guys, one of their missions was to pick up rocks and everything like that. They had to train for months, a long time, with geologists to figure out how to just do the basic amount of geology. And I would imagine the same thing would happen with the cameras. They would have to train a very long time because the cameras are extremely important. These pictures were very important, not only from a PR standpoint, but also from a scientific standpoint, to be able to get actual images of the moon that are of really good quality. Another point that I saw you bring up was the adjusting the lenses and the aperture and the focal length and everything like that. Well, if you're standing at the same distance, and a lot of these images, and some of the ones that you sent, are from a very similar area, you don't actually have to adjust the lens every time you take a picture. You just have, if you're close enough to it, you just take the picture again. Again, with a small aperture and a large depth of field, with a wide or a small aperture and a wide angle lens gives you a very large depth of field. I saw that in the chat, and I forgot who said it, but that was said in the chat just recently. So if you have a large depth of field, you're not really worried about things being out of focus. And I'm sure as a photographer, you know that. And the whole thing about the film being in a vacuum. Well, they're not developing the film in the vacuum. And first off, this is hardened film to start with. So this is already film that has gone through special chemical treatment to be hardened. And you're developing it back on Earth once you get back. So the vacuum should not be that big of a problem. In fact, they tested it inside the capsule, I believe, and they determined with the color frames, and it determined that there hasn't been any issue with it while it was on the surface of the moon. That was just 4 points that I had written down from that. But there's one thing I want to discuss when it comes to all of this. Let's say that every bit of imagery and film taken on film is fake. We still have TV camera that was broadcasted. That was not on film from the moon.
Okay, let's address that one.
Okay.
Just one point. The film was not developed on Earth on the Lunar Orbiter. It was developed on the craft. It was a Polaroid type development system, and then the film image was then scanned, transmitted to Earth, and reassembled. That's why we saw the pictures. The Lunar Orbiter is still up there, as far as I know. It's not come back to Earth. On Apollo, yes, the films were brought back and developed here on Earth at the Johnson Space Center.
Yeah.
The point about the pressure is that the vacuum levels on the moon are vastly greater than in low Earth orbit. Mm-hmm. Because the vacuum varies depending on height. the pressure that was required is about 1 pound per square inch, i.e. not very much. The equivalent of an aircraft flying at 60,000 feet here on Earth. Astronauts could survive at 3.8 pound per square inch, I think, was inside their spacesuits, which is more or less the same air pressure you would experience at the top of Mount Everest. Of course, air pressure varies. Sea level is 14.7 pound per square inch, and it varies according to height because you've got less air to press down. So the idea that vacuum affects photographic film is a fairly well-known feature, fairly well-known fact about film, because the film itself outgasses. Now, there's some tests going on right now. I didn't know anything about vacuum affecting film until I heard this talk, I said about 18 months ago. And some people that I'm aware of are doing testing using vacuum chambers. But there's a problem with that, is that the only commercial vacuum chamber you can buy easily will only achieve the equivalent vacuum at the International Space Station, which is about half the level of vacuum that will occur on the moon. And that is a major problem, because if you can't test for it, how do you know that you don't have a problem? I've seen no mention of any...
You can test a camera in a vacuum chamber.
Oh, I'm not talking about the camera.
Okay.
The camera will survive. I'm talking about the film, the photographic film.
That would also be tested in a vacuum chamber.
You sure of that?
I would imagine so.
Well, that's what everybody thinks. Well, of course they tested it, they'll say, but where is the evidence that they tested photographic film at Torr 10 to the minus 11? That's the vacuum level on the moon. If you can't achieve that here on Earth, and it's very difficult to do that, even the Glenn Research Center in Ohio can't do that. It can do 10 to the minus 7, but not 10 to the minus 11. So what I'm saying is that photographic film, we assume it was tested, but where is the evidence? I don't see it. A lot of people have tried to find that evidence, and they're still trying to find it. And this was done 60 years ago, 50 years ago. But when NASA knew that photographic film was damaged by a vacuum, because they put it in a pressurized housing on the only two spacecraft which used photographic film, the implication being that they were aware that photographic film is damaged in a vacuum. So they took steps to ensure that it was okay. So there's a major problem here. And I haven't even started talking about radiation, which you'd probably best not go on to, because that gets a bit tricky.
Well, here's the thing that I would say. I don't know much about film. I don't know much about the actual aspects of film. When it comes to radiation, I know that it could have easily survived the radiation, especially the pictures that we did get back that came back. But what I would argue is that it was impossible to fake it. That's my argument. Is that the pictures that we do have show aspects that could not be achieved with the technology that we had at the time.
Such as?
All right, so actually, real quick, I'd like to go to an image of mine. Let's see here. Or should we go to one of yours? Let's see. Would one of yours work?
Which one?
No, it would not. All right. So you didn't have what I thought. I just figured we could use one of yours. All right. So let's go to the one of Neil Armstrong standing next to the little thing. I don't have a number for it, but it's Apollo 11 Extra 0307A-5 is the name of the photo. When I downloaded it, I sent it to you, Kennedy.
Is it that one?
Can you get it up? It's the one where he's standing away from the lunar module. It's the only one that I have that actually was taken on the moon.
Look at the stream. Do I have the right one up?
I've got a lot that taken on the moon.
All right, he's got it up. It's up on the stream. Everybody can see it. Really, all you really got to do is just pull up any picture of yours that you have on the moon. It's one of Neil Armstrong standing next to the little thing that he dropped. The name is away from me, and he's looking at the lunar capsule. It might be Buzz standing there, but he's looking at the lunar the landing module with the flag in the foreground and the background.
That's Buzz. That's not Neil Armstrong.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, but the point that I'm trying to make here is you mentioned the inverse square law earlier, and I'm asking, do you know the inverse square law when it refers to light?
Yeah, same as sound and same as electricity.
Yeah. So
it's the square.
So what is producing the light for the scene? That landing module is, what would you say, a couple dozen meters from Buzz?
Could be, yep.
So we're looking at a light in which, if you look at the ground all the way there is no droppage in light. There's no droppage at all in how bright it is. So we have to have a light that is far enough away and bright enough to make a couple dozen meters, which is not a short distance, irrelevant.
And your point is?
My point is that light does not exist. One of the largest lights they had at the time would have been a 12K, especially in a movie studio, or not 12, a 20K in a movie studio, which is a massive light. The thing itself is about 4 feet tall. But if you go into a movie studio, studios themselves are only yay big. And so if this is, let's say this is on one side of the movie studio, and the world's largest movie studio is about 200 meters. 200 meters from one side to the other, especially any one that you can get on. So first thing we'd have to establish is the fact that the movie studios at the time were all accounted for. We don't know what studio this was, soundstage this was shot in. Apparently NASA had built one, and we don't know what it was. But
it's almost certain Menlo Park.
It was where?
Menlo Park.
Do you mind if I Google that real quick? How do you spell that?
Mother Edward November Lima Oscar. Menlo Park. It's near San Francisco.
Here we go. Menlo Park. Yep.
See, it's huge.
All right. So if Menlo Park soundstage. Yeah, so 1,400 square feet. Is that it?
Well, that's a possibility. I'm not saying it was. I'm saying.
All right. So if we're talking about Menlo Park, and I'm just on Google Images, so I may not be looking at the right one, but I am looking at some pretty large studios. Here's Lumberyard Studios. That's pretty large.
It was built originally as an airship hangar.
Yep, and that's what I'm looking at. All right,
and
cool.
It's where Jeff Bezos wants to keep his private plane now.
All right, cool. Yes, so I imagine that's what I'm looking at. So we're looking at something, I'd roughly say that's larger. That's easily larger than a football field. I'm just going to take a guess here. Obviously, it's just an estimate, but I would say about 200 yards.
It's big. It's big.
Yeah, it's very big.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it was where Tom Hanks filmed that miniseries From the Earth to the Moon.
All right.
Which did reproduce a lot of these images. And we know, I mean, it was done here on Earth. I mean, Tom Hanks and, what's his name, the director.
And when was that shot?
69, 99, I think it was, 98.
99? Okay.
Apollo 13 was, I think it was 1995, and the director was, I think, Ron Howard?
That's right, Ron Howard, yeah.
Okay. So, what are you saying he shot Apollo 13 in this place?
I don't know if it was Apollo 13. No, that was shot in Hollywood because it was all done in the studio. In fact,
well, a lot of the movies in Hollywood, when they say it was shot in Hollywood, it was shot in the towns around Hollywood.
Sure, yeah, the studios.
Okay. And this studio looks like it's around Hollywood.
Well, Menlo Park's near San Francisco. But just to come back, right at the beginning, you mentioned Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick actually never worked on location, primarily because he didn't like flying. He was very, very frightened of flying. He only ever filmed in a studio.
Okay, but can I get back real quick to the
Well,
lighting?
actually, I'd like to dispute that because the majority of The Shining is filmed in the Stanley Hotel on location.
Oh, yeah, good point. Good point. Yes, you're right. It was. But did Stanley? No, let's not get into detail of Stanley Kubrick. I'll come back to him because there's a link here, which you might be interested in.
But real quick, can I get back to my point on lighting?
Yeah, sure.
So, when you have a 20K light, and it is so 20K lights are usually used to mimic the sunlight when it comes to small sets and stuff like that. And you could put it in when you're out at nighttime, you can put it out above. I've seen them put out on top of a shop to make it look like it's daytime on the interior, but they go far and they're bright, but they're still subject to the inverse square law. And they're not bright enough to make a couple dozen meters irrelevant, would be my point. This light that we're having up in these images has to be bright enough to where it is lighting this to the LM and even further out. And you can make an argument that way out past the American flag would be a backdrop. You can make the argument of that, but still, from the LM to the flag, that's still like a dozen meters. So we're looking at potentially 40 meters right here, where it's completely irrelevant. We see zero change in the brightness of the lunar surface. How is that accomplished from a single light source inside of a studio?
Miniatures.
So Buzz right here is not standing there. That's a miniature.
Could well be. I don't know if he is or not. But the point is,
what's the evidence to say that it's a miniature?
The evidence actually occurs with the lunar rover, rather than quite a lot of these pictures of astronauts. I think, with two exceptions, you don't see their faces. You see the nameplate that they've got on their chest, and it says E. Aldrin on that one. But a lot of the other ones, they're further away, and quite a lot of it would appear to be using mannequins, miniatures, and models. Is it possible to tell the difference when you've got a skilled filmmaker using, what's the name of the camera where you use not a periscope, a snorkel camera, which will film on a miniature camera, and when projected onto a screen, all the perspectives are correct, and you think that what you're looking at is for real, but it was actually done on a miniature set. Well, that's a fairly well-established technique in Hollywood.
Miniatures are pretty impressive. You do have miniature people who are very good at making it and everything like that. But again, if you can't tell if it's a miniature or not, then that doesn't mean it's a miniature.
No, it doesn't. But it doesn't mean it's not.
But that would mean that you're the one making the extraordinary claim here, and you would have to prove that's a miniature over just a regular photograph.
All right. The only real evidence for that I've come across is the film of the lunar rover, which I think was Apollo 16.
Oh yes, I actually sent that to Dead Kennedy in Space. It's the Grand Prix, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Just
that's
pulled it up.
16 Grand Prix.
It's playing now.
All right, it's playing. All right, cool.
Now, if you look at the astronaut on that lunar rover, and there's also a bit of a mystery because they had TV cameras mounted on the lunar rover.
Mm-hmm.
The TV camera by the lunar lander, and they had a film camera inside the lunar lander.
Mm-hmm.
Who the hell was filming it? And what were they using? Was it TV or was it film? Anyway, I don't know the answer to that. It's just a question that I've yet to have answered. The point is that if you look at the astronaut sitting in the lunar rover and look at his arms, this thing is bouncing all over the place because it's going quite fast, hence the term Grand Prix. If you look at his arms...
It wasn't. It was not going fast.
It was going fast enough so that it was bouncing up and down.
Yeah, but I believe it was going, I think it was going less than 15 miles an hour.
On the moon, that's fast. How do you know that they weren't going to hit a sinkhole, a dust bowl? They didn't. The point is that if you look at the astronaut, his arms are like this, and they don't move in the same way that the lunar rover moves, indicating it was almost certainly a mannequin and a radio-controlled model. Now, I don't know.
Could that because he's gripping something?
He's not gripping anything. His arm's right out here. It's sort of held out. The only thing
can you find us a good frame where we see the arm and pause it?
Shoot, I'm not sure if I actually can. If you give me a minute, I can pull up a still frame, but right. I just need a second.
All right.
The only thing that the astronaut's hand should be on is the control panel, which is relatively low compared to the way his arm is in that point. It's a stick. It's a sort of tiller where he can change the direction of it using it. It was a very clever piece of kit, assuming it worked the way we were told.
Okay.
Now, just to come back to photographs, if we can go to slide number 16.
Can I address the lunar rover? Because I actually have a couple points. Can we stay on that for just a second?
Yeah, sure. Okay, go on.
Give me less than 30 seconds here, and I can pull up a still image.
All right. So, in order to make the lunar rover a miniature, that means that we're dealing with a remote-controlled car, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, miniatures in photography is pretty different from miniatures in when they're moving in on film and stuff like that. This does not strike me as a miniature in any way. Addressing the arm holding up there, these are bulky suits that are really hard to move in. In fact, we just had to improve the suits because the suits were too hard to move in. I'm currently talking while I'm looking for a photo of the arm being held up.
It's on stream.
Got it. There we go. Okay, so yes, the arm is being held up, not holding anything. But I want to state real quick, I do have a lot of experience when it comes to driving, when it comes to bumpy driving particularly. And right. It's not that difficult to keep your body still, especially if you're secured in a suit that is very bulky. That arm wouldn't be moving that much. Again, I would argue that these are highly trained astronauts, and this could be I'm not sure. I've never been to the moon, so I don't know this for sure. But it could be a way. Could be a way of keeping your balance. It could be your arm is being held there in order to keep you in balance. It could be that the suit itself is bulky, and it's hard to move the arm to it take a lot of inertia to get it to move up and down. Now, it doesn't look, and since they're on 1/6 the gravity of Earth, there wouldn't be that much force acting on the person. It'd be 1/6 of the bumpiness.
You've just made one very important point.
Okay.
They're in 1/6 gravity.
Okay.
Right. Let's say the average person weighs, 120 pounds? No, a bit more than that, 140 pounds?
Man, if that's the average person, I am not looking good.
All right. 180 pounds. Let's go for that.
I would argue that the astronauts would probably be weighing about 200 pounds because they do have some muscle.
All right, 200 pounds. Okay.
Yes.
On the moon, they're going to weigh 1/6 of that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, they've got a backpack on, which apparently weighs about the same as they do. So in effect, no matter what they will weigh 1/3 of their weight on Earth.
It doesn't matter. It's not the weight that is necessarily the amount of problem. It's the flexibility of the materials.
Yeah, well,
can I just want to weigh in really quickly. I did some Googling. Armstrong, with his suit and everything he had on him, at 17% gravity, was about 360 pounds.
That's pretty heavy.
He weighed 360 pounds in 17% gravity?
Yes.
Come on. He weighed up 360 pounds on Earth. Armstrong wasn't a big person.
Suit and all is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
what we're talking about is the weight. What weight will they weigh on the moon?
Yes, this answer that I have here does the math to know exactly what they would weigh. I can send you the link to that.
Yeah. What's the answer they give there?
360 pounds.
What website is that?
No, that is wrong. That is completely incorrect.
What's the website for that, Kevin?
Give me 1 second. I'll send it in the
Because
Skype chat.
I'll be honest too, that does sound pretty high for me too. I would have said something about 200 pounds or 250 pounds. Oh, no, never mind. That's not. I read
There we
that
go.
wrong.
Just put the link in the Skype chat. Is it just one page? Yeah, it's just one page.
Okay. Let's see here. Click on that. Oh, I opened it 7 times. Okay.
It's a good round.
All right. I'll read this quick. A backpack weighs 60 newtons, 13 pounds on Earth. All right, that's how much it will weigh on Jupiter.
Sorry, yeah, part of this is like a classroom tutorial. But
when
that
the
first
astronauts,
paragraph, yeah.
When the astronauts walked on the moon, they felt much lighter than they felt here on Earth. Neil Armstrong's total mass was about 160 kilograms with spacesuit and backpack. Did not change, however, the moon. This is really weird grammar. Did not change, however. The moon did not pull as hard on him as the Earth did, so he weighed less on the moon. At the surface, the moon's gravitational pull is only 17%. Yeah, so on Earth, with his heavy spacesuit and backpack, Neil Armstrong weighed about 1,600 newtons. He weighed 360 pounds here on Earth, dude.
Okay, that's my mistake. I apologize.
Yeah, that is your mistake. And so, answer: with his suit and backpack, Neil Armstrong weighed about 270 pounds on the moon. Okay.
That sounds more correct, yeah. You know what? I'm gonna blame Google on that because I worded it so that I was Googling how much did he weigh on the moon, and that's what Google spat back at me.
Let's say that Armstrong weighed 150 pounds. Let's say his backpack weighed 150 pounds on Earth. That's 300 pounds on Earth. On the moon, it's 1/6 of that weight. Instead of 300 pounds on Earth, he would weigh about 50 or 60 pounds on the moon, or the equivalent thereof, because of less gravity. The point I'm making is that though his energy will be the same, he will appear to weigh considerably less, and therefore there will be less friction between his boots and the surface. It will be as if he is walking on ice. Now, if you ever tried to walk on ice, you'll know, yes, you can do it quite easily, but you've got to make damn sure you don't fall over.
That's one of my jobs.
What, walking on ice?
Yes, it is. I actually work for a hockey team on the weekends, and so I do their things on the ice. I do their little games they play, so I have to walk on the ice every game.
And is it more difficult to walk on ice than it is here on Earth unless you've got special boots?
I wear my regular tennis shoes. After a little bit of training, or after doing it a couple times, it's a lot of fun. I can run at about 50% my regular speed on ice.
Right. And can you stop as quickly on ice as you can on ordinary?
It depends. If the ice is extremely smooth, as in it just had the Zamboni go over, I've gone an entire 70 feet in one slide from a full speed. But if it was after they had been skating and the ice is a little rough and not smooth, I can stop almost instantly.
All right. The point I'm making about this is that assuming that the astronauts weighed considerably less on the moon, which I think we can agree, than they do here on Earth, they were in an environment they'd never been to before, nobody had been to before.
Okay.
When we see them on those films gambolling about and singing and throwing things around, it's as if they haven't got a care in the world. If you go to a place you've never been to before, you don't know what the environment itself is like.
No, but you can calculate it. And you can simulate it.
Yes, they did simulate it. They spent about 8 years simulating it.
Yes. So that you can have a good guess as to what it's like. And here's a good thing that's put in the chat. a 60-pound person doesn't have problem walking on the Earth. If they weighed about 60 pounds on the moon, so let's say they are, like, it'd be the equivalent of a 60-pound person here on Earth. Children weigh 60 pounds. They don't have trouble walking around here on Earth. They don't have trouble jumping in the air and stuff like that. They don't slide over the grass when they stop. Even on a relatively smooth surface, they're not sliding around when they try to stop.
Yeah, because their mass is considerably less. A child's mass is much less than an adult's mass.
So if your argument is that they weighed a third of 360 pounds, or a sixth, sorry, of 360 pounds,
yeah.
and they're not behaving like it,
yeah.
Well, how? And you're saying they should be behaving by sliding around, right?
I think they would be sliding around because they would have
a person who is a sixth, who gravity is working a sixth the amount of 360 pounds, which is roughly 60 pounds, they don't have problems like that here on Earth. They're not sliding around.
And?
So why would we expect them to be sliding around up on the moon?
Because they hadn't been there before. They didn't know what the surface was like. Therefore, they would be extremely careful.
We do know what the surface was like. We had landers that landed on the surface and took samples.
They didn't send it back. They photographed it.
No, but you can take readings.
And which ones did that?
I believe that the Americans sent one. I don't have the name of it off the top of my head, but for the specific purpose of landing on the moon, and the Soviets did too.
Yeah, it was Surveyor that did that.
Yeah.
Lunar.
In fact, Apollo 12 actually was missioned with visiting one of the landers.
Yes, Surveyor 3.
Yep.
Which was in the, guess what, Surveyor crater, named after the lander. It's a remarkable piece of navigation, that one.
Yeah. So I don't see a problem here. If they were expected to weigh somewhere around 60 pounds on the moon, relative to Earth weight,
yeah,
I don't see why they would be sliding around. We know what the surface is like on the moon.
Have you seen film of them practicing when they had the weight? I think it was at Langley, Virginia, where they had the special structure that they used to remove weight from the lander, remove weight from the astronauts. If they remove, I think, 70% of their weight, and you see them actually doing 20-foot high jumps, doing somersaults.
Why would they be doing that? Why would they be doing somersaults and 60-foot jumps if they're supposed to weigh about 60 pounds?
Well, just to prove they could do it. I mean, these are filmed.
No. If they were to weigh like 60 pounds, well, then my niece, who weighs about 40 pounds, should also be able to do that.
Look. I think we got cross purposes here. An adult man on Earth weighing 150 pounds will have a greater mass than a child weighing 60 pounds.
Muscle mass.
Any mass. His weight is different.
All right. Well, then put that with the...
Mass. I mean, a child, your niece has got a much smaller person than her mother.
Well, muscle mass would be the relevant kind of mass here when we're talking about the ability to jump high.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've beaten this one to death. Let's have a look at slide number 16, if that will illustrate a few of the points I'm making. Slide 16.
We can. All right, set.
You got it? 8 photographs. Got it?
Okay.
Sequence. This is Apollo 11. This is Buzz Aldrin coming out of the lander, moving onto the lunar surface. And there are the photograph numbers. They're taken in sequence by Neil Armstrong. It took about 3 minutes. I'm not saying that you can't take 8 photographs in 3 minutes. Of course you can. The point is that every single photograph has to be composed differently. And the third photograph along on the top is of the rubbish bag that had been chucked out earlier, which requires a different exposure and a different focus.
I don't see why it would need a different focus or exposure.
Because on the lander, you're in shadow, so there's much less light.
Okay.
On the rubbish bag, you're photographing a directly illuminated surface of the moon, which is a completely different level of light. The fourth photograph is of the lander's leg. Again, you're photographing directly into the light.
Mm-hmm.
The photograph is correctly exposed. And you come down to the fifth photograph with, that's Buzz Aldrin coming down the ladder. And if you look in detail, I've got the close-up, his right foot is not touching the rung of the ladder.
Okay, so we can get to the rung one in a second. If
you've ever been mountaineering, you'll have been taught the first rule of mountaineering is 3 points of contact at all times.
We're not talking about mountaineering on the moon, though.
We are talking about a person going into an environment they've never been to before. He's 10 foot off the ground. If his right foot didn't touch if he missed the rung, he more than likely would have fallen off. And what's his left foot doing? Stuck out at a ridiculously stupid angle. If you've ever been onto the roof of your garage to clear the leaves out of your gutter, you won't come down the ladder like that.
Yeah, but have you ever been inside of a spacesuit on the moon? In 1/6 gravity in a spacesuit?
No, of course I haven't.
Okay, well then why are you where do you think that you are in a position to draw parallels?
I'm doing what you're doing. I'm assuming a great deal.
Okay.
Now,
but what I'm saying is when you're assuming like that,
yes,
without evidence, you don't have what makes you think that you have the proper experience? Hold on. What makes you think that you have the proper experience to draw the parallels of climbing down a ladder on your roof or mountaineering to climbing down while in a very stiff spacesuit in 1/6 the gravity?
Because it's a perfectly legitimate comparison to make.
I don't think it is.
10 foot off the ground, like you would be if you're clearing your leaves off your gutter. What I'm saying is, if you're coming down the ladder, having done it, would you come down like that?
I don't know. I have never been inside of a stiff suit, and also, what if that's his foot going down to hit the ladder, and the picture was taken right before he actually got onto the ladder itself? I don't see the problem here. You can take a picture right before his foot touches the ladder, which is what it looks like to me.
Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can. Yeah. And it was a very fortunate time to take the photograph. The point is that his body is in motion. It has to be. If his foot isn't on the rung and he's about to put his foot on the rung, therefore his body is in motion.
Yes.
But his body is not. The photographic film being used is Kodak Ektachrome film, transparency material.
Okay.
You have to get the exposure right. You have to get the picture right. Moving on to the right-hand picture, the sixth picture. He's a bit further down the ladder. The final picture is of him standing in the rung of the ladder, but he's lit up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, that one is actually. So I actually shared a video of that one. I've been waiting on you to bring that picture up because that argument that he has been lit up too much is absolutely been debunked. In fact, in a video that you actually have appeared in, NVIDIA is a video game software company.
Oh,
and
NVIDIA.
Yes. Okay. Well, then you're aware of this. So
I was invited to appear in that film.
Okay.
NVIDIA. And I said I would only do it. I said I'm very happy to do it. And they said, well, we're very pleased. Sign this non-disclosure agreement. And I said, I'm not doing that. That's why I'm not in the film.
Okay. Well, either way, NVIDIA is a video game software company that produces software for video games. They decided to test their stuff on recreating that photograph, in which I think they did a very good job of doing when they account for all the lights. If you look at the video and you look at the image that they came up with, I don't know if Dead Kennedy can actually do that at the moment, but either way, if you look up the video yourself, the end image is very similar when they account for Neil Armstrong being the last light source. And I think it's very easily proven that he is. And one of your own images, and with the documentary, a documentary that the moon-hoaxers tried to do. It's on, I think, is What Happened on the Moon. they went in there and they did some calculations, and they found out that the other light source that is shining onto that thing is approximately 20 centimeters to the right of the camera. Well, can you guess what's 20 centimeters to the right of the camera? That would be the suit of Neil Armstrong. That's his suit, which reflects a lot of light, almost as if a bounce would do on a movie set.
You really believe that, do you? You really believe?
Yes. Have you ever seen a bounce be used?
No, come on, hear me out. Neil Armstrong was standing a good 10 foot away. You can see from where he took the photograph.
Yeah.
The actual photograph that NVIDIA recreated, I believe, was the 7th photograph there.
No, it was the 6th. It was the one that you said it was a Christmas tree. I believe it's 6th. That might be 7th.
Well, he's lit up like a Christmas tree in all of them. So anyway, the point is that if it was okay to get enough light, and it's the sunlight which is actually at right angles to Neil Armstrong.
Yeah, you're right, 7th.
7th one. Neil Armstrong was standing in sunlight. That's not in dispute, or whoever it was. He was standing at right angles. He was facing Buzz Aldrin, so the sun was coming over his right shoulder. So it wouldn't have illuminated his whole spacesuit. Now, for a start, if it was the case that photographic fill-in light can be achieved by having a photographic assistant wandering around a set with a white coat on, filling in the light, you wouldn't need the huge reflectors that are used on film sets and in photographic studios.
The reflectors are not huge.
The other point...
bounces are not huge.
Bounces
are not huge. I know. I've worked with bounces. I'm actually fairly skilled at using them. They are not big.
Fractional.
They're, in fact, Neil Armstrong himself, who is a person-sized, that's a big bounce. That's a very big bounce. The amount of and also we have video from the TV camera, and Neil Armstrong, the face of him that you can see, that him looking at Buzz, is entirely lit.
Yes, it is. It's entirely lit.
So that means that there is light bouncing off his entire face.
Yes, there is.
That is a lot of square. That's a lot of square area for light to be bouncing off of.
Okay, now answer this one. What is the reflectivity of the lunar surface?
Fairly low, but is a good amount of lunar surface reflecting to it. You also have light bouncing off of the LM. In fact, everywhere that you see light or see that's not completely black has light bouncing off of it.
Okay, the albedo of the lunar surface in this particular area, the Sea of Tranquility, is 8%.
Okay.
8% of the light hitting it is reflected.
And there's a lot of lunar surface.
There's a lot of lunar surface.
Yes.
That is the same amount of light that's reflected off a road surface.
Okay, and that can be a good amount of light.
A tarmac road surface. Now,
okay.
A friend of mine who is rather more computer savvy than I am had a look at the NVIDIA film and said, I don't buy it.
And I don't buy that.
He didn't buy NVIDIA's answer. He said, what is the reflectivity that NVIDIA are using in that film? And once he'd done his RGB calculations on Photoshop, he got the answer, 40%. NVIDIA were using the reflectivity of the lunar surface at 40%, when it should have been set at 8%. If it was set at 8%, it wouldn't have illuminated anywhere near as much. Now, when the Mythbusters did their deconstruction of, I think it was the same photograph, and they tried to show, yes, there's quite enough light to create this image. What they didn't tell you, and it was only discovered by some Russian filmmakers who tried to recreate the Mythbusters program, was that they were wearing white coats. Of course they reflect enough light that way.
Because of course they were wearing white coats.
They were wearing white coats because they were using models. It was about a foot high. They were using spotlights in a studio. And the only way the Russians could
okay, so they're using models, yeah.
And so the Russians used white coats, and they said, look, we can get the same result. So
if we're using a different light, where's it coming from?
Saying that a video film proves it demonstrates that.
So where is the other light coming from? The background light that's lighting up Buzz coming down the ladder. Where's it coming from?
It could well be the sun, because if it was photographed outside, it's perfectly possible to create a black sky in a photograph.
Okay, so if it's coming from the sun,
yeah,
that's lighting up Buzz, what light could they possibly have that would overpower the sun's light? The sun's light.
You use a big reflector.
No, you don't do that. First thing that they teach you in class when you shoot outside. First thing.
You can say no, you can't.
No. The first thing they teach you in class.
He's going to explain it. Just give him a moment, Marcus.
Yeah,
sorry.
The first thing they tell you in class when you go into any kind of film study or at all is that when you shoot outside, the number one light is the sun. Nothing beats the sun. Not even a 20K lit up in the daytime, which is the brightest light that you can possibly get, or one of, especially at that time period. It does not beat the sun. Now, if you put it 3 inches from the object, then yeah, it might. But it doesn't beat the sun's light, especially on a sunny day. So, sorry, no. A reflector or something like that is not beating the sun. You can argue that a reflector is lighting up Buzz Aldrin, but it is not what's lighting up Buzz Aldrin. If the sun is being used, it is definitely the light that is lighting up the LM, in which we see that giant shadow that he's standing in.
Yeah. Now,
okay.
The other point about that is that they're directly illuminated by whatever light source it could be, whether it's the sun or a 20K spot or an electronic flash. It doesn't matter what it is, but whatever is illuminating it, the directly illuminated surface behind the LM is overexposed in the photograph. This is Kodak Ektachrome film, which has a very low tolerance of exposure latitude. Now, you've got to get the exposure correct, or you ruin it. You get it washed out, or you get it too black. The directly illuminated surface behind him is not overexposed.
Okay.
Buzz Aldrin, assuming it's him, is standing in shadow. It'll be completely black.
No.
It will.
No.
It'll be completely black.
No, it would not be completely black. There's light bouncing off of the LM. There's also light bouncing off of Neil Armstrong himself that's lighting him up. Neil Armstrong is virtually acting as a bounce.
If you want to agree with that, that's fine.
No. Do you want positive proof that Buzz Aldrin is acting as a bounce, and we can actually view one of your images? Your image number. Let me go back to it. It would be the one of the boot, just right on the boot, number 2, image number 2, Apollo 11, foot not on ladder.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
All right, cool. If you open that up, you see the glare coming off the backside of the boot? That glare is white. When they did the calculations on the documentary What Happened on the Way to the Moon, which I'll trust their calculations on this, they found that bounce, that light, is coming from, they said, a reflector placed about 20-odd centimeters to the right of the camera.
Yeah.
Now, 20-odd something centimeters, that's about 10 inches. It's about a foot. Actually, it's less than 10 inches. It'd probably be about 8 inches off the top of my head. That's the suit. That is the suit of Neil Armstrong that is acting as the bounce. If Neil Armstrong's holding the camera, then everything you would – and the suits bounce an incredible amount of light. That comes to about – that's expected what we see right there. And guess what? In that documentary that was made by some of your buddies, they said that this bounce would positively be what was required to light up Buzz Aldrin there. And we know it had to have been a bounce from a lower angle bouncing up, because we do not see any shadows on the moon surface itself. So that means the light source cannot be coming from above. It has to be coming from below. And what else is below at the correct angle that they calculated the bounce should be? Neil Armstrong. So there has to be light coming off of Neil Armstrong that's lighting up Buzz Aldrin.
If you say so, I just don't agree with you.
I'm not saying so.
I
Math is saying so.
I don't agree that Neil Armstrong's spacesuit, at an angle to the sun anyway, would be of sufficient intensity to create that amount of light into a totally dark area. I don't agree.
The suits themselves bounce off about 80% of light.
Yeah, 80%.
That's
80%.
a lot of light.
Yes,
Even a cheap bounce produces 85 to 90%.
Yeah.
That is a lot. That suit is virtually a bounce.
If you say so, I just don't agree with you. That's all. You know, you can go on protesting
But
it.
okay, but you can see how it is not a contradiction. Him being lit up that way is not a contradiction. It's exactly what we would expect. If the suit itself bounces 80% of light, if the surface of the moon bounces light back up, if we have the LM bouncing light too, we would expect him to be lit up the way he is.
If you say so, but NVIDIA proved it and they got found out. They faked it.
I don't think they did.
Yes, they did.
In fact, in the video that I've seen, they gave all their sources.
Not all of them. They were asked to give the RGB levels that they were using for the surface, and they refused to do so.
And who is this apparent computer genius that calculated all this?
Jarrah White.
Who?
Jarrah White.
I couldn't hear the first name. I heard the last name White.
I think it's Garrah.
Garrah?
Jarrah. Check his website.
Yeah, I am.
Moonfaker.com. You can tell where he's coming from, can't you?
I'll give you a little experience, or a little insight into what Kennedy and I have experienced for a very long time. Sorry if we don't believe people, especially conspiracy theorists, off face value when they claim. Okay, it's not pulling up the website, but we deal with people a lot who claim things and never give anything from it. And I know I'm not giving my sources right now, but especially when it comes to conspiracy theorists, they're very, very bad about it. Like an example, flat earthers claiming that they're pilots when they're not actually pilots and stuff like that. I know you're not, but I'm giving an example. You guys use a lot of the same arguments, though.
With it, though. Don't equate me with it.
He's not equating. He's just making an example. I understand the frustration there. Nobody wants to be compared to flat earthers.
I agree. No one wants to be called a flat earther yet.
Okay. Take image number 1. Let's look at a real fake photograph, shall we?
All right.
Image
got it up.
Okay.
You got it? It's from Apollo 14. Mm-hmm. That photograph was actually taken from Al Shepard's book, Moonshot, his autobiography. It's a fake photograph.
What do you mean by fake photograph?
Well, it's taken on the moon, right? And in that photograph are 2 astronauts. Who took the photograph?
Are we sure it's a photograph?
Yes. Above.
Are we sure?
Yeah, okay. It's a photograph. I'll give you a story behind it.
So I want to see what. Yeah, I want to hear the story, the claim that NASA makes about this photograph, if at all.
The right hand of the 2 astronauts is Al Shepard. He's the one with the golf club.
Okay.
That white spot on the right-hand side is his golf ball. He's just hit it. Hence, golf shot. Above Al Shepard is a crosshair, which is an artifact of any photograph taken by a Hasselblad camera on the lunar surface.
All right. Yep, I found it.
Okay, you got it.
I found it online. This is not a film. This is not what taken with film.
No, but that photograph was originally displayed at the Kennedy Space Center.
Yes, yeah.
Until we pointed out that it was actually comprised of 5 different images. Okay. The lander on the left, the flag on the right, the astronauts in the middle, and the golf cart. And the shadows extended. It's a composite. It wasn't labeled as a composite.
Okay, they mislabeled.
Yeah, they mislabeled.
Okay.
They also. I haven't got the picture here, but there's also one of Mike Collins, which is a fake photograph as well, which was taken inside the Vomit Comet, and it was used to portray. I think it was a Gemini 8.
Yeah, NASA screwed up in their public relations. Okay.
Yeah, NASA tend to screw up.
And how does that prove that we didn't land on the moon?
It doesn't prove we didn't land on the moon, but what it proves is that NASA tend to be a little bit economical with the truth on occasions.
Are these done out of malice?
No. To go back to where we started the story, it's to do with the Cold War. It's to do with the necessity to demonstrate to America and the world.
Could it be that public relations people are not engineers?
Could be public relations people do what's asked of them. No, of course they're not engineers, so they make mistakes.
Yes, they do. So pointing out a couple of mistakes they made doesn't see in any way that's evidence that we didn't land on the moon. Especially, so do you want to talk about this whole golfing thing?
Well, it was just that it came from Al Shepard's book.
Okay.
He's best known for having taken a golf club up onto the moon and whacked a couple of golf balls.
And we have footage of that taken from a TV camera.
Yes, which is nothing like that photograph. So why didn't they get it right? Because it probably wouldn't have looked so good. All I'm saying is that, yes, it's now acknowledged to be a composite image. But is that the only composite image or any fake image that they produced? If you go to,
I just want to make a quick technical note here. A composite image is not necessarily fake.
No, it's not. I've taken many composite photos. They're all taken by real photos. They're made up by real photos.
Like, yes. For instance, Marcus, a couple weeks ago, I was working at a really nice location. I took a panoramic photo of the shoreline. That's a composite, but that shoreline's still completely real.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, of course it was. Of course it was. Okay, let's go on to number 4. There's a point to make on this.
Okay.
No. Real quick. I want to stick with something because I don't like moving around like this. Let's stick with this golf shot for a second here.
Okay.
We have TV camera video. I don't see why you keep ignoring that.
Oh, of course we do. Of course we have TV.
Okay. How is that faked?
And it wasn't. And I used that particular image.
Hold on. If the TV camera footage wasn't faked, then that means we were on the moon.
No, it doesn't.
All right. So then how was it faked?
Oh, all right. Okay. I'll try to outline it briefly.
Okay.
Have you seen or heard of a film called Make Believe Smoke and Mirrors?
I have not.
Okay. I believe it's back online. It was posted about 5 years ago. Okay. It's an extremely complex piece of filmmaking in itself.
Okay.
And it explains in considerable detail how the Apollo films, many of the films, were created. The photograph would have been quite easy. Now,
I agree. The photographs would have been way relatively easy compared to the film. But so I want to hear it from you because obviously I can't sit and watch a movie right now.
Not 2 hours, 44 minutes.
Is it? So it's 2 hours. I think it's 2 minutes, 44 seconds at first. But yeah, that's a long documentary. And now that you say it, if there's any way that you can email me the title so I can keep it for later.
Okay.
But was it shot on film? Do you believe that the moon landing, the faked moon landing was shot on film?
Film was involved, certainly, and that's how.
The actual images, were they shot on film?
Yes, that's how.
Okay, then why don't we see? Why do we never see a film artifact, especially when switching reels? Right,
that's a technical question.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, what I would say is there's a very popular YouTube video. I'm sure you've seen it. That's from a filmmaker. Name escapes me at the moment. I didn't think we'd go to this, but when you're using film, you'd have to I have to ask, do you think it was slowed down footage?
It wasn't slowed down, right? You're familiar with an optical printer?
An optical printer. I have to look that up. I'm sure if I see it, I know it.
Okay. Basically, it's a film copying device.
Okay.
If a film is shot at 144 frames per second,
mm-hmm.
and every 6th frame is extracted from that original film, it will appear to show slow motion. If every 3rd frame is extracted, it will appear to show slow.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it's slow motion. The
Yes,
point
I'm
is-
aware of this. Yes.
Right. An optical printer can be used to create virtually anything.
Yes.
If the original films were created and then transferred via optical printer to various formats, and there were 4 different formats used, 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter, 70 millimeter,
Yep.
3 formats. There are 7 different speeds of film in the Apollo mission. If an astronaut is close to the camera, he will appear to be moving slightly differently than if he's further away.
Okay.
And
So
that can create.
can I address something now?
Yep.
The footage that we have on the moon in Apollos 12 through 17 are all in 60 frames per second.
They did it well, didn't they?
That means that they would have to be shooting at 180 frames per second.
Yeah.
That's a ton of film.
Where does
for,
the 60
for
frame,
hours.
Where does the 60 frame per second come from?
That comes from when you download the video, it's in 60 frames per second.
So it's taken from a video, not a film.
Yes, because it's taken from a video camera. That's how they actually did it. But if you're saying that we used an optical printer, that means it had to have been done on film.
Yes, it was done on film.
Okay, that means if they faked the moon landing, they shot it with film cameras.
Yes.
Okay, if they shot it with film cameras, then that means they were overcranking to the aspect of 180 frames per second.
Are you saying that's not possible in 1960?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that's not possible. The overcranking itself is possible. What I'm saying is, well, the overcranking is possible. It's very difficult. What I'm saying is that is a lot of film. A film camera itself, you'd have to switch it. I think they did the math, 6 or 7 times in an hour, or something like that. But either way, you'd have to switch it multiple times. You'd have to live switch the film. Which is okay to do it one time, but to do it that many times without ever having a mistake is nearly impossible without a film artifact of any kind being in the film at all. Because film artifacts, even on the best quality of film, when you look at old stuff, there's still film artifacts left here and there.
Yeah, but that's why it was originally done on models.
So the astronauts walking around was on models.
Of course it was. Well, not all of them. Some of it was real life, but the majority of it was models.
So they used stop motion?
No, they wouldn't use stop motion because you could
Then
see.
how do they use models?
Not all of it was models.
Okay, well, let's take Apollo 11 for example. How about that? 30 frames per second. They would have to overcrank it 90 frames per second. That footage, the black and white footage that was sent to the TV, that's 2 hours long. That means they would have had to shoot what's a third of 2 hours? 45 minutes?
40 minutes.
Yeah, they would have had to shoot 40 minutes straight. Which, okay, that doesn't sound that hard until you realize that film capsules, they only do about 15 minutes.
Okay. I acknowledge that your knowledge of film is greater than mine.
Well, not the photography film, but when it comes to camera.
Yeah, cameras. I mean, there's had, I'm not an expert on all aspects of it.
And neither am I.
I do understand about the photographs. Yeah. Just one point. We were talking about all this TV footage from the moon, and we're all familiar with the live TV broadcast from the lunar surface.
Okay.
How did they do it? How much power was required to transmit the television?
Not that much.
How much?
I don't know the actual number, but it wouldn't be that much. We had a direct line from the moon to Australia. So when you have a direct line in the broadcasting, the reason why it's so hard on Earth to get broadcasts here and there is because of the line of sight. That's why towers are so tall, trying to get over the curvature of the Earth. Get wrecked, flat earthers. But that's why. Sorry, I had to throw in that joke. But that would be that would be that, and the atmosphere itself. You're going through the atmosphere horizontally and not vertically, and the easiest way to get through the atmosphere is vertically. So when you have no atmosphere on the moon, there's really nothing that's competing. There's nothing competing against the waves as they get to Australia, and then they just have to go straight down to the receivers down in Australia.
That sounds logical, except when you start looking at the inverse square law of transmission over distance.
Okay.
If you're transmitting a television signal over 250,000 miles and then through 75 miles of the Earth's atmosphere, which is what they claim, how much power would be required to drive that signal from the lunar surface?
It sounds like you have done the math before. Do you mind telling me?
More than the 3 kilowatts that were available on the batteries in the lunar lander.
Was it?
A regular TV transmission tower takes about 35 kilowatts to transmit over 60 miles through the atmosphere, admittedly. So it seems highly improbable that a transmission could be achieved over that distance. I don't know for certain, but it just seems highly improbable from a logical point of view. If it takes 35 kilowatts to transmit over 60 miles on Earth, wouldn't it take about that to transmit 250,000 miles and then through the atmosphere as well? Possibly. I don't know the answer to it. It's just that I'm not persuaded that TV signals were transmitted from the moon. One way.
700 kilohertz bandwidth for television downlink on the USB signal. I'm just trying to read and see if I can really quickly find it. The problem was that this is from Popular Science. The problem wasn't that there wasn't enough bandwidth for the standard video camera of the day that transmitted 525 scan lines to the data of 30 frames per second at 5 megahertz. Instead, NASA would need a slow scan camera optimized for smaller format, 320 scan lines of data at 10 frames per second that could be transmitted at 500 kilohertz. So, with guidelines for the camera set NASA according to 2 contracts, that I'm just reading off an article here.
Okay.
But it seems like they weren't sending super high powerful video, and they had freed up 700 kilohertz of bandwidth. So
if I remember correctly, I remember reading somewhere that it was like filmed at 10 frames a second or something.
Yeah. So I want to take something back. I was earlier when I said 60 frames per second, or earlier. I had that wrong. I had the wrong numbers in my head. 10 frames per second on Apollo 11, and they were like, I think it was 24 frames per second on the other ones. I was deadly wrong on that, but it would still require a lot of overcranking. So I just want to get that clear. I just remembered that. I'm not the smartest person, so.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't really see the problem when you have a line of sight, and radio signals themselves are fairly effective at what they do, and they do go a very long way. Even the earliest radio transmissions still made it out past Pluto before they dissipated. So much that it's almost unrecognizable. If you have a large enough radio dish back here on Earth, even with the inverse square law and the dissipation of the broadcast, you should still be able to pick up a signal. That's fairly clear. It would be my answer to that, and I don't have the good answer on that. And sadly, my roommate has a lot more knowledge on that than I do. So whenever I talk about that on the channel, I go to him because he's an electrical engineer. But
okay,
yeah.
Fair enough. Talking of receiving signals on Earth, do you recall the retroreflectors that were used apparently put on the moon by astronauts to reflect a laser beam fired from Earth to measure how far away the moon was to the nearest centimeter or whatever it was. Anyway, And we're told that the only way that those retroreflectors could be placed on the moon was if somebody had put them there, i.e. Apollo 11, 12, and 15.
It's not that that's the only way. It's that those are the ones that we're hitting.
Are you aware that the first laser beams fired at the moon was done by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1963, and they received a signal back, albeit not very much, but they received a signal back. That was before Apollo, obviously. Mm-hmm. The Crimea Astrophysical Laboratory were doing the same thing. So the point about that is that it doesn't need a reflector for a laser beam to be fired at the moon and for a signal to be received back.
I'm actually, I just looked that up, and it looks like they did reflect off something in 1963 because there were unmanned trips to the moon during that time.
I was about to say,
something called the Zond rover.
Zond?
No, that was 1970. The Zond rover. That was the Russians. It was the French.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lander in 1963.
Oh no, a rover, an unmanned rover, I believe.
Yes.
I could be wrong on this.
It was 1970 that the Russians put that there. And they were also they also launched, I think it was Lunar 15, was launched the same day as Apollo 11. And they were going to the moon at the same time. But America was particularly concerned that they didn't interfere with each other, reasonably enough. And at that time, the Jodrell Bank radio telescope here in Britain was tracking the Russian. It wasn't tracking NASA. They were tracking the Russians because the head of Jodrell Bank was Sir Bernard Lovell, and he was cooperating with the Russians with the full knowledge of America and Britain.
Okay.
Because Russia didn't have its deep space network that America did. So they were following the Russian craft. And they knew where it was going. It crashed, apparently. It crashed on the moon day before Apollo 11 got there. So it was all a bit of a non-starter. But the point is that it's perfectly possible to fire lasers at the moon and get a signal back without there being any reflectors there.
Okay, but is it possible to get the specific reading back that you would expect to get when you're reflecting off of a reflector on the moon? If that reflector's not there, and you get the specific reading that you would expect to get, is that possible?
I don't know. I've seen the MythBusters program, and they appeared very overexcited about the fact that they were hitting something on the moon because it was sort of flashing away at them, and they were getting a signal back.
Well, I would be hyper excited too, but we're talking about scientists here and students that are coming through who have a lot more experience in this field than us do. So when they see numbers pointing on screen, me and you, we may not be able to read those numbers, but they can, and they could determine where on the moon that hits, is what I'm trying to say here. So a reading that was just a general bounce off the moon's surface would be different than a reading of bouncing off a reflector specifically placed there.
Not necessarily, because how do you know what your laser beam has hit? Because if when a laser beam leaves Earth, it's 1 centimeter in diameter.
And by the time it gets to the moon, it's way wider, and when it gets back, it's even wider.
That's right. Two kilometers, I believe, is the figure given.
Well, like this. If you were to hit a random spot on the moon that doesn't have a reflector on it, you get one reading. If you hit a spot on the moon that has a reflector on it, you get a completely different reading because you get more of the laser back, because that one bit of reflector bounces more.
If you say so, I don't agree with that because...
well, I don't see how you disagree with that.
I disagree with it because how do you know where the reflector actually is on the moon?
You know where the reflector is because we placed it on the moon.
We placed it on the moon, but do we have the coordinates of precisely?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And even if the laser is getting a little wider, well, then it's hitting the area that it's in. And you don't need the exact down to the inch. You just need the exact down to a couple hundred feet. And that's very easy. We actually do know the exact to the inch where everything that is on the moon is. And just like we know the exact to the inch where my car currently sits here on Earth.
We claim to know where it is, but
if we claim to know where it is, then it's not a contradiction when they say, "Hey, I claim this is here. I'm going to point a laser there and shoot at it," and it comes back getting the result that we expected. There's not a contradiction there.
There's a perfectly good contradiction, because how do you know exactly where the reflector is? The reflector is about a quarter of a square meter. But
yes, and we can pull it down to a pebble.
You don't know that.
Yes, we do.
It's very. You're claiming something you can't prove.
No, this is provable. You can use coordinates to bring something down that's very small.
Right. What are the coordinates of the Apollo 11?
I don't know. Actually, yeah, I do know. Here, coordinates of Apollo 11 landing site, right here.
There's about 10 of them. And it took a lot of work to work out, to get there are so many different actual figures.
0 degrees, 41 minutes, 15 seconds north, and 23 degrees, 26 minutes, and 00 seconds east. That would be the landing site within the Sea of Tranquility.
That's one set of coordinates.
That is a basic set of coordinates.
There's 6 of them for Apollo 11.
I don't see another 6 of them for Apollo 11.
Coordinates all over the place, as if they didn't actually know where they got to.
See here.
I'm going to need a citation on that.
Let's see here. Let me hit the back button and compare. Here's one. It's a different style of coordinates. It's not written in the same way, but at least the 23 degrees. This is 23.47 degrees, or 23 minutes 47 seconds apparently, or just degrees. It's not even written in the minutes and the it's not written in minutes and seconds. It's written in just straight degrees here. So that would appear why it's different, but it's still 0 degrees north and 23 degrees east. So that it's just a little bit less resolution. Again, here it is written again in the same way. It's just less resolution. And again, we get the 41 minutes, 15 seconds north, 23 degrees, 26 minutes east. So everything that I'm seeing when I just did a courtesy glance onto Google has the same coordinates, and all of those coordinates are pretty low res, to be honest. But you can easily within that pick out a better resolution of it, especially the fact that we've had something literally see it.
Because each minute of degree of the lunar equator is equivalent to 2 miles.
Okay. And how wide was that laser by the time it reached the surface of the moon?
2 kilometers, which is
2 kilometers. It's just a mile. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we know it down to the second, how large is the seconds? I'd imagine a 60th of 2 miles. So if we know it down to the second,
0.3 of a mile.
All right. So if we know it down to the second, then we're well within range of the laser.
Assuming it's hit something. But then
we would tell if it hit something, because it would bring back a different reading, a more bright reading than if it just hit random surface.
Well, yes, that's very easy to achieve as well. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't go with your logic on this one.
I don't see how you do not.
Just because something flashes brighter than somewhere else, which can be achieved any number of ways, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's hit a particular reflector. There are 3 of them. There are actually 5 of them on the moon. 11, 12, and 15.
Yes.
And 2 Russian ones, lunacods.
Mm-hmm.
They were there. They've lost one of the lunacods. I can't find it. And I think the other one got covered in dust when it started driving around.
Okay.
So they're not working so well. Hopefully, they put the reflectors far enough away from the alleged landing site so that when the thing took off, it didn't blow the dust all over it.
Okay.
Which is why the Apollo 11 flag got blown over, because it was too close.
Yep.
And you can't see it. So how come we're all claiming all these pictures showing the?
So how do you know that the Apollo 11 flag blew over? I'm just curious.
Well, you see it in the film when it takes off, falls over.
All right. So you're gonna go. Okay, cool.
And
so
they said, "Oh, don't put the flag so close, so put it away."
next time, yeah.
Which is obviously what happened, because there's a wonderful picture here of the missing flag.
Okay.
Where's the flag? Number 11.
Number 11. 1 second.
Oh man, that one got left out when I downloaded.
There we go. Got it.
I'll see when it pops up the stream.
Where's the flag? Flag's in the top picture. This is Apollo 15. Probably Jim Irwin saluting it. Very nice. Lovely shot, that. You go from the flag across to the lander into the rover. It's all beautifully set up. And then in the lower picture, where you've got the lander and the rover, not necessarily in the same position, but where's the flag?
I still can't see it. I'm waiting it to appear. Oh, that's why it's not appearing. Okay, there we go. All right. Can you repeat what you said just a second ago?
All right.
Please?
In the top picture, you've got the astronaut, the flag, the lander, and the rover in that sequence. In the lower picture, you've got the lander and the rover. No astronaut, but he's gone to do something else. But it's more or less the same position, because the mountain behind with the St. George crater on the right-hand side is the same, but there's no flag.
All right.
So where's it gone?
First guess, they haven't planted it yet.
Memo to set dresser. Remember flag. Ah.
No. I mean, they haven't planted it yet.
I just want
to
say I think part of his point here is in the image. One of the first things they did when they landed was put up the flag.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, it was the first thing.
I would like, and do we have the footage of that?
Of them putting up the flag?
Yeah.
I could get it.
Well, I'm just stating. I mean, we have footage of all of this.
Well, if the flag is up there, obviously the flag was put up before the rover was taken out of the lander.
Why is that obvious?
Well, it's a logical sequence of events.
Is it? Do you know what the sequence of events were when they got off onto the moon?
The first thing they usually did was put the flag up.
All right, but we're not talking about usual. We're talking about the specific one. We have this in a book. In fact, we can watch the video of them doing this. What's the first thing they do when they land?
Well,
I don't know. I'm asking the question. What's the first
thing they do is look out and say, "Oh, look, we've landed."
Okay, and then?
Just one other point. If you look on the right-hand side of the lander in that top picture, it's in shadow. All the lander exit points were always in shadow because of the way in which they landed. Because they had to see where they were going, so they had the sun behind them.
Yes.
And you don't see any detail whatsoever in that lander. It's in shadow. That's just making the point that in the Apollo 11 ones, we saw lots and lots of detail in the lander, including inside the hatch. But on this one, where it's not an important part of the picture, it's just not visible. I'm just making a comparison. I'm not saying that it's any more significant than that.
I just want to quickly add in here, I looked it up, Apollo 15, the first thing they did after stepping foot on the moon was take out the lander. Or take out the rover, excuse me, the rover.
There we go. Then that would explain where the flag is. Okay. The bottom picture was taken before the top picture.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell the sequence the pictures were taken in because the magazine numbers are not necessarily in sequence.
They are not.
Top picture is 88, bottom picture is 92.
Yeah.
Magazine number. That doesn't actually mean anything.
All right, so at least for the where is the flag argument, would you say that that's not a contradiction?
I would say that I would have to check that the flag wasn't put up before the rover was taken out.
And I'm really sorry.
Can you cite your source?
I know I'm not supposed to be I'm supposed to be moderating here, but I just want to point out we're at a slightly different angle in that second photo, and if you look really closely, there's an oddly flag-shaped shadow in the lower left corner of the bottom photo, just out of frame.
Hang on. An oddly.
Oh, in the bottom left, that like blurry thing.
Well, there's a square-shaped shadow that looks like it might be the flag just out of frame because we've moved.
Yeah, I saw that
slightly.
too, but I don't really know what that is.
I'm not saying it is, but just the second photo is clearly taken slightly more to the right, and it could just be hidden from view.
No, I don't think that's the case. I thought that was just a piece of equipment. See, there's a shadow coming off of it. I think that's a piece of equipment that's been placed on the ground.
It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah. Guys, can I ask for a break at this point?
Well, to be honest, we're pushing 2 hours here. I think we might be over 2 hours at this point. This is usually about how long these discussions go.
Okay.
If you want to have another discussion, I'm sure Blue would be interested.
If we're gonna end it, which it sounds like you want to, Kennedy, can I bring out one argument that I've been kind of wanting to do, and I want to see what his what Marcus' take of it.
If Marcus is okay with that, we'll do one more and then wrap up.
Yeah, go on.
All right, Marcus. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and so, Kennedy, I think you know what picture to throw up. My favorite picture in the world.
Yep, it's up.
It's Blue Marble, 1972. The picture taken by Apollo 17 in 1972 by Ed White.
Okay. By who?
No, not Ed White. Sorry, freaking moron me. Shafee. What's his name? Whatever. It's credited to all three of the crew. I don't know why. I've been writing my script for my Apollo 1 video, so I had Ed White stuck in my head. But it was taken by the Apollo 17 crew. What's your take on this picture?
It's the only picture, as I think you explained on one of your previous videos, the only picture of Earth from space.
No, it's not.
All of the others are CGI.
Okay, no, it's not. And so one of the, I think the video you're referring to is my Imaging Earth video, in which I go over all those images.
Yeah.
Of those, in fact, I guess you can make the argument one of them is CGI. Most of them are composites. I haven't watched the video in a while, but it's the only one in that particular span of pictures that was made in film. This is a film photo. This is not an image taken by a digital camera. And the only way that we can get far enough out to see this 40, I think we see 49.7% of the Earth's surface. The only way we can get to see that is if we're far enough away from Earth to get that, which you'd have to be on trajectory to either leave Earth or onto the moon in order to get that picture.
It was. I think that was a distance of what 35,000 miles. I think.
I don't have the number off the top of my head. Right. I know it's in my script, but I don't have it in my head right now.
Fair enough.
I just know it was about halfway to the moon was when they took the picture.
Okay. And?
How did they get that image?
Unmanned satellite, which is what they were using for most of the transmissions.
Unmanned satellite. All right, but this was taken on. First off, this came out of the film camera that the Apollo 17 crew had. And how would also you explain the Apollo 812?
Which is what?
The video of the astronauts in the capsule. Then they show it out the window while they're talking.
Earthrise.
Yeah.
That's very simple. I mean, you've seen the model of the Earth they used, don't you?
Okay, but why is that model? Why is that model exact to the weather of that day in 1968?
Very simple.
And this one right here.
Very simple. That's what they knew had to be seen in the photograph, and that's what they produced. Very easy to do it.
Is it? It's very easy to predict cloud cover over the entire Earth.
Check out Lookout Mountain Laboratories.
Mountain Laboratories.
Lookout Mountain Laboratory. It's near Laurel Canyon in north of Los Angeles. Look out. It's a privately owned house now. It's owned by Jared Leto, the actor.
Yeah.
But it was a US Air Force film laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, rumored to be better equipped than anything in Hollywood.
Okay.
Post-production. I've got another interview due in about 5 minutes.
All right, cool.
We could continue. Won't last very long. We could continue if you like.
No, I think we're good to wrap up here. We can have a part 2 some other time if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, we could do that. We're very happy to.
Because I was only expecting 2 hours, and we got 2 hours in. So.
Wow, that's not bad, is it?
Well,
no, it's.
With that then, because Marcus does have things to do here, I'll make this pretty quick. Marcus, I do want to thank you for coming and for staying civil, both of you. I appreciate the tone of this discussion. It's been very cordial. And again, Marcus, if you want to come back and have another debate with Blue or with anyone else, really, you're more than welcome. Really quickly, I'll read out super chats before.
I could say for super chats if Marcus might have to leave though. Sure,
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'll do super chats and then we'll wrap up. But again, Marcus, thank you very much for coming. And if you got to go, feel free, man.
That's great. Thanks. Well, thanks very much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it. You never know how much you've taught me. Maybe when I've done it, I'll tell you, because you do make some very good points. So I thank you for that.
And you make good points too. And I'm glad that we had a very civil discussion. I'm frankly not used to it. I'm a child of Twitter, so.
Yeah. I'm British. That's what we do.
And I'm Southern, so we have manners.
And I'm far too old to get into all sorts of nasty things. So
yeah,
I won't do that.
I appreciate it. You're easily the most fun of the conspiracy theorists that I've ever had interactions with.
Really?
So,
well, thanks for that. And next time, I'll explain why in Britain we drive on the left-hand side of the road.
And I'll explain why you're wrong. So
no,
you do that.
Part 2 follows shortly.
And I'll also explain why tea needs to be iced and not served hot.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna start another civil war here.
Revolution. It's a revolution.
Another revolution, yes.
Let's not mention Boston, shall we?
Oh, my computer's freaking out. Did I lose the live? Shoot. My computer's freaking out, and I can't hear anybody, and I don't know if the stream can hear us. Shit. Hello? Can you guys still hear me? Okay, I can still be heard. All right. Well, everything's frozen up on me now, and I have no desktop audio coming through. So Skype is just crashing all over the place. Great. Okay, give me a couple seconds, guys, to try and sort this out. Very sorry, some of the parts of my computer are on their last legs. Oh, come on. Come on. Okay, all I have is Skype freaking out on me right now, and I can't pull anything up. I can't even get out of it. Oh, Skype just crashed. Okay, so we lost Blue there. And I apologize for that. But now maybe my computer will cooperate enough with me to do super chats. Iffy connection here, yeah, okay. Alright, I got myself signed into YouTube Studio. Just call me over Skype. Man, Skype crashed. I'm scared of Skype now. It fucking freaks me out. But Blue, I'm literally just going to read super chats and then thank everyone for being here, and then we'll close out. Same meets room. Let's see if I can pull that up. Fuck. Give me a couple seconds, Blue. I'm gonna see if I can pull up the old meets that we had there. And Blue, if you're still in Skype with Marcus, let him know that I'm sorry I cut him off that way. It wasn't my intention. Everything just crashed on me. Meet. Where's the meets? Meets. Hello, meets. Why is Chrome such a monster resource hog? Yeah, guys, we didn't want to use Skype. It's just Marcus had some issues getting in on the Google Meets for whatever reason, so he asked if he could switch to Skype, so we got it going there. Just trying to pull up the meets or something, so I'm not just babbling out my ass, which is what I'm doing now. Also, I do want to thank, I had a pretty high amount of trolls this time. Apollo Detectives, Feel Jesus in You, Multi-Tom-Tom. Thank you guys for coming. I gotta say, I appreciate you guys because you teach me so much truth about the world around me. Nothing to do with anything you know, it's just what I learn in the process of debunking you. So we had 3 super chats. One was before we started, $10 to Millia Moon. So proud of you at Dead Kennedy in Space and how far you're coming. You're a talented and amazing content creator. I can't wait to celebrate 4K with you, friend. Thank you so much, Ilya. If I ever get to 4K, I'm like less than 10 away. Eric Hare for $10 said keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Eric. Pardon me. And Mr. President 99 for €5 said if all this was fake, why didn't the Russians call it the USA? In that time, that would have been the first thing they would have done. Another one from John Rapp. Thank you very much, sir. There we go. There we go. I got Blue back here.
No.
And just really quickly, John Rapp for Australian, $5. You'll have to face for us now. Great discussion, but just more incredulity, doubt, and disbelief. I will say Marcus said the phrase, I just don't believe that a few too many times. What do you think, Blue? Still there? Oh, you can't hear me?
Yo, now I can. I had to turn my headphones. But yeah, I had to switch back over to my board. If I sound a lot better in sound quality, that's because I switched over to my board. Skype doesn't agree with my board. Yeah. So, did you get that last super chat, the $5 ones?
Yeah. Yep.
Right, cool. No, I just want to hop back in and just talk about what that was right there. And I didn't think that was as much of a debate as it was a discussion, and that's kind of what I wanted. I don't want to sit here and yell at somebody for 2 hours, you know?
No.
I don't want to do that. And I'm not an expert in this in any means. And I enjoyed listening to Marcus, and what he thought is what I really wanted to get out of him and what he thinks. There's a couple points that he said that, I mean, I can go back and we could probably go through and stuff in like his broadcasting bit. I tell you right now, there's not a problem there. And I'm not the best at all at sourcing my thoughts and everything, is why I wasn't really holding him to it. But yeah. And I do appreciate Apollo Detectives / Shill Stompers. Bob, thank you for appearing into the chat. Reading your stuff was hilarious. I loved it. The guy who treats me like a child while himself acting like a baby. At least I'm the older one in the situation.
Oh, and you know what? Now that I have the chance, I'm going to address Tom directly. I gave you shit for ad hominems because that's all you had. And then once I realized that's all you had, I came at you with ad hominems. That's the slight difference between what we did there. And also, John Rapp just donated another Australian $2 and corrected himself. He meant, sorry, dance for us now. So you'll have to dance for us now. I am too white for that shit.
Dude, I am literally dancing right now as I talk. So there you go.
There we go. We got Blue dancing.
But
yeah, that was interesting. It was, yeah, like you said, it was more of a. Sorry.
There wasn't a single ad hom thrown by either side.
No, there wasn't.
No, it was. That was very civil. Like Marcus is a fantastic dude to talk to, and everything like that. Completely understanding, which is an amazing change. I am so happy about that. Like,
shut up and take my money.
Like a lot of people think that we would go into this wanting to have a dumpster fire. We don't. I'm not here. John Rapp, if you're gonna keep donating, at least give me some of it. But
oh, John, man, Head in a jar dancing, if anyone can, for Australian $2. Thanks so much, John.
Yeah. But we don't want to come in looking for dumpster fires. They're not fun.
Well, I will say every now and then, like, I don't go into it expecting it, or rather, I don't go in wanting it, but every now and then I do go in expecting it. And in those cases, I'm just kind of going for more entertainment, but preferably would be a calm, rational debate in which we actually present evidence for both sides and talk it out.
Yeah. And again, I don't have the burden of proof on me, which is why I wasn't really talking that much. I really wanted to hear his side of the story. And what he said it's not enough for me to doubt. Like, the points when it comes to the lighting on the lighting Buzz Aldrin when he's coming down the stairs, I'm pretty sure there's been enough people that demonstrated that it's completely possible to do that, especially with the whole light coming off of Neil Armstrong, which he never really addressed, if you heard it.
Well, yeah, I noticed that his kind of final counter-argument to NVIDIA's whole attempt was, I just don't buy it.
Yeah, that's what it ended up coming down to, and that's a very typical argument when it comes down to it, and everything like that. And frankly, I trust NVIDIA over a conspiracy theorist who claims to be computer software.
Yeah.
So, like, sorry, but I do. And everything like that. But I thought it was good. What was your initial take of the whole thing?
No, I thought it was good. I did initially. It felt like you were giving him a little too much rope, mainly just in his intro. But
I was waiting on you to hop in. I didn't want to interrupt his intro. I was waiting on you to hop in.
Well, I gave him, like, I had it on a timer, but I gave him a little bit of extra time, just because it felt like he was going to get to it quick. But then he kept going on to another thing and another thing. And I was like, okay, we gotta slow this down here.
And I was guilty of it a couple times. Every now and then I would try to go on a tangent, but it seemed like he went on a lot of tangents.
Yeah. Okay, I see
Bob
people.
Science guy, I completely agree.
I see people in the chat arguing about whether or not the Bible says that the Earth sits on four corners. It also says that the Earth is hung upon nothing. The Bible doesn't really say much about the shape of the Earth at all.
Yeah.
Those are simple sheep herders who didn't really consider the concept of an entire Earth.
Yeah. The Bible's not a book.
It's not a geography textbook.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought that went well, and it was interesting because there was a couple points where he tripped you up, where you didn't quite have the answer ready.
100%, yes.
And then there was this, the same thing on the other side. You had a few points that he just had no answer to and reverted to, I just don't buy it.
Yeah, and there was a couple points where I reverted to, I just don't buy it. I think that was pretty even. There wasn't I don't think that I wiped the floor with him. I don't think he wiped the floor with me. Like, I think that was, and plus I didn't think that was going to happen either way. I thought that was a good discussion.
Yeah.
Which is, again, what I wanted to start out with. And I mean, if anybody were to say, it's like, oh, you're just saying this because you lost or anything, I can go back to the email chain that we've been in, where I specifically stated to him, like, I don't want to debate, but,
Multi-Tom, take lessons here. The whole time you've been in this chat going, oh, this kid's losing, Blue Earth thing doesn't know a thing. It's not about winning or losing. It's about having a productive discussion. I know that when you accepted your cult belief, you stopped having discussions with people like a normal person, but that's not our problem.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, productiveness and everything like that. It's good. We're going to have a part 2, hopefully. Like, hopefully we get our schedules to line up. I know this took a month to put together because of our schedules are hard to line up, but hopefully we get another one, man.
Yeah. And hopefully by then I'll have stuck some more RAM in my computer and won't have these problems anymore.
Yeah, that would be nice.
All right. Well then, with that, I do want to thank everyone for coming today. This has been a very interesting, very illuminating discussion. And I do hope to have both of them back. I'd love to see a part 2 on this. But for now, was that you, Blue?
That was me. It tells me that my Predator game is starting. Go Preds.
Nice. All right. Well, you get on watching that, and And we're going to sign off here, and we'll be back sooner before later. Again, thank you everyone very much for coming. Thank you, Blue, for coming. Thank you, Marcus, for coming. And everybody have a great day, and I will see you over the curve, Space Cowboys.